A very warm welcome to Scarlino in Tuscany for the penultimate day of racing at the Rolex TP52 World Championships. We're expecting a couple of windward-leeward races today. We had a big long coastal race yesterday and good conditions for that. Things looking pretty tight at the top of the table. We've got Platoon leading by 2 points ahead of the world champions Quantum Racing, and Allegra by virtue of yesterday's coastal race getting themselves up into third place. So Fergal Findlay, fearless as ever. What are your thoughts on the racing yesterday and what we're looking forward to today?
Like you say, we got two or three maybe windward lewards today, so back to the normal. Everyone's done the coastal, that's out of their heads now. It was a tricky race for them, and yeah, I hope the conditions from our window look really nice and a bit more breeze, so should be up for a really good day today.
As I say, yesterday was the coastal race, a long day, 26 miles, one or two changes, a key change down at one of the islands where the breeze disappeared, the early leader Preveza losing out to Quantum Racing, and that allowed Quantum Racing to get ahead, I think in the end probably leading about 400 metres across the finish line. Let's look at yesterday's highlights in the highlights clip. Buongiorno. A very good day to you. Welcome to Scarlino. Another beautiful sunny day, beautiful spring sunshine, and it's the third day of the Rolex TP52 World Championships here in the Marina di Scarlino, a beautiful new marina with fantastic facilities. What does it have to offer for the 52 Super Series?
I love Scarlino, and I think it was the one suggesting this place because I've been racing here with smaller boats, with the J70 and Melges 20, and you can almost get guaranteed breeze every day, especially in spring, so I thought it was a great venue.
We have a resort, so we have apartments, and we are sure that it's a perfect venue since you can arrive here and spend one whole week having restaurants and whatever you need. Marina di Scarlino is also a perfect place for photo shooting since the sun is setting just in front of us when you are having some Tuscan sunsets, and you can have maybe a drink and take a few pictures.
So this is the third day of racing here at the Rolex TP52 World Championships, and it is the first coastal race of the season. Breeze should be around about 14 to 16 knots peak. We're going down to Sparviero Rock, which is a little island off Punta Ala. A nice beat, a true beat all the way down there, a little reach out to another island, and then some zigging and zagging around before we come down to the finish. Should be about 3.5 hours, great challenges and beautiful scenery.
It's all about teamwork, have a good strategy, good execution, and try to get it up there.
A lot of pressure on the start, and I'm remembering ourselves in the start of this race last year, tangling perfectly the committee anchor, the pin and anchor line. So we had a perfect start, and at the end we took the pin with us. So we hope this year is a little bit better.
And of course, choice of footwear is always important. Nacho Postigo likes to go barefoot.
I don't know. I like it's always been like this. The only time of my sailing career I remember using the shoes was in the America's Cup, and just because I was helping in the aft pedestal and the grinder in front of me, every time I was going to click on one of the buttons, he was always stepping on my feet. So I had to use shoes to protect my feet from the other crew member.
Number 5 is a coastal race, the first coastal race of the season, and Preveza make a great start. Quantum Racing good as well. Allegra get to the most left-hand side of the beat, and at the first mark it's Preveza leading Quantum Racing and Allegra. Platoon down in 5th, the regatta leaders with some work to do. Then up the long beat to Sparviero, then Platoon called a really nice ley line in the lifting left-hand breeze, got right back into the pack on the long beat. Then down the run, Preveza, the race leaders, are more than 240 metres ahead of Quantum Racing. So at Cibola in the lee of the island, the breeze goes funky. The leader Preveza mark the light air spot, and Quantum Racing see that and get through to lead. Platoon get up to second place, and on the final run Quantum Racing extend, going into the new breeze and extending to win handsomely. Platoon gets second and so lead the regatta by 3 points. Allegra's third takes them to third overall.
It was great. Yeah, it was really, really difficult. A lot of moving parts out there. And, our guys, I thought Platoon made a great move heading out to the island, and we just got over them in the nick of time. And team just did great work from there.
We're sailing well. We have a good group on board. We're having fun, and we're learning every day. So perfect ingredients to sail well. Yeah, it was an interesting race. A few opportunities out there. Got us back up in the front pack, so a great result for us.
So after 5 races, Platoon on 11 points leading the regatta, Quantum Racing on 13, Allegri up to 3rd on 22, Azura 24 and Gladiator in 5th on 28 points.
No, we are reasonably happy. Not super happy, obviously, but we will recover in our team. We always recover in these things from a very, very nice dinner. Eric can get us to a big, big dinner, some gin tonics, and that everything looks much better after that.
Well, that's it. The 26-mile coastal race done and dusted, the first of the season, and a nice win for Quantum Racing with Platoon in 2nd place. And the reward for that marathon, well, we now move forward to the Scarlino's famous crew party.
Ciao, buonasera.
Nobody step on my feet today, no. No.
So Nacho Postigo, I think, talking literally but figuratively, I think, or in reality, I think Quantum Racing stepping on their toes going round that mark at Chibori. But what's going to happen today? I mean, we've seen Platoon then incredibly consistent. Their worst score so far is a 3rd. They just have to keep going.
Yeah, Platoon are just on fire. I mean, we saw it in Key West and Miami as well. They've really upped their game this year. Whatever the shore crew and the team are doing to the boats in the refit period over the winter, if they've made some big changes, they've obviously done something right. And we said yesterday that Harm's very good at chipping away at people, and they started off down the fleet in 5th and finished in 2nd place with a comfortable gap on Allegri as well. So they're really one to watch.
One team which are not doing quite as well as perhaps they hoped for is Brennusek Gazprom, Vladimir Lubomirov's Russian team. They have Morgan Larson. Now, Morgan has been around the circuit, extremely talented sailor. He sailed on numerous different boats, more recently ran. He's on Brennusek this year, and we spoke with Morgan just to see how things are going on that boat just now. And this is Morgan Larson. So with the Morgan Larson then from the Brennusek, Morgan, what's it looking like today?
Yeah, I think it's a variable day. It's a pretty tricky forecast. Quite a bit of weather coming just to the north of us, north of Elba, crossing over from Corsica, and a little bit of rain in that weather. But I think we're going to be safe on the south side of it. And, if things go right, we're going to have a nice south wind and be able to get some good races.
Tell us about your processes coming into the racing daily. What do you do for forecasts and how do you work it?
We have a couple good forecasts coming in, and we have a great Italian guy, Ezio, and he actually, Michele Evaldi found him. He's from the paragliding world, so he's used to more three-dimensional forecasting with vertical development in the wind, and so for him, sailing's quite easy. You don't have to worry about the geography so much, and it's more two-dimensional wind. But he was spot on yesterday. I tell you, we followed him to a T in the long race, and we really made some great ground up during the race.
So it's working for you?
Yeah, it's special. That's the great thing about sailing is you meet different characters from different sports and different walks of life, and to be able to work with new people like we are with Ezio, it's a great moment.
How's it going with the team then at this regatta?
Yeah, I think the team's coming together. Saying that, our results haven't really showed that. We're definitely batting under what we think where we think we should be, or where we could be. But saying that, it's a real tough field here. So we're going to have to sail a little above our level to get up into the top 3.
And what's the key principles? What's the watchwords in the Brennusek today?
Well, we have quite a few going here, but we have the tools. We got to use those tools, and that's the key here for us.
Yeah, Morgan Larson there. He has the tools, he thinks, and they just have to up their level just a bit. I mean, 2/5 is their last score. That's their best scores of the regatta so far. 5th yesterday in the coastal race. Talking about their weather guy, Ezio Sarti. He's from the world of gliding, and he's talking about three-dimensional forecasts. Just give us a little insight into what he means there.
Well, I think hang gliding and paragliding is a sport where you need to have a really good hold on the wind, and a lot of weather experts will know about the spiral, the Coriolis effect that makes the wind slightly different higher up. As you go up, it spirals, and he'll have a really good hang on that as he's higher up, and he'll be using that information to give to the sailors, and I think his local knowledge of this area will be a really good help to anyone.
So we do have Ezio. We did speak to him, an interesting character, very different to who you normally found around the dockside at the 52 Super Series, but this is Ezio. Tell us about your job with the Brunello team.
In Brunello team, I'm a meteorologist, meteo man.
And have you just started working with them, or have you been with them for a while?
I started last year with Brunello.
What your speciality is more gliding and
yes.
Your forecast. So explain that.
Yes, my specialty is meteo for glider, and with meteo for glider we work with 3 dimension and not only with 2 dimension like sailing a boat.
And what's the forecast for today? What's going to happen today?
Today is not easy because my high resolution model, we have high resolution 1.3 km for Scarlino Gulf, show strong wind from 3 and 4 local time, about 20-21 knots. It's only model that show that.
Yeah. Good. And what are the local trends, the local things?
The trend is the wind decrease after 4 o'clock and increase just 12 just and 2 o'clock, 16, 18, 20 knots. Southwest wind, Scirocco.
Good. So a good day?
Good day, see. It's very.
So that's Brunello, a weather guru, Mr. Ezio Sarti, a specialist for the gliding fraternity, but also doing a great job in providing the weather information. He's saying 20 to 21 knots later on in the afternoon, and then after that the breeze dying away. But of course he's talking around about 4 o'clock. We should hopefully be done by then.
Yeah, I think everyone will be keen to have a bit of a shorter day after the long one yesterday. But yeah, there's a few different weather forecasts out there. I know ours doesn't go quite up to the 20s, but I think our forecast showed the highest of 18, but generally around 14 to 16 around midday to 2 o'clock.
So hopefully we're going to join Jenny Tulloch. Jenny is on the water, and we spoke to her very briefly before we went live. She said it was actually a little bit lighter than forecast, and some of the mainsails going for lighter mainsails. Jenny Tulloch, can you hear us?
Yeah, I've got you guys, Andy. That's exactly the case.
We can see you.
Oh, hello. Isn't it gorgeous out here? It's La Dolce Vita again on the Tyrrhenian Sea. But you've got it right. I think when we first got out, it was probably about 14, 15 knots. And ultimately, as we've been out here for 20, 30 minutes, it's dropped now to maybe even 11. So just about 10 minutes ago, we saw 5 teams go for a mainsail change. Azura, Brunello, Quantum, Gladiator. And so I believe they've probably gone to their light mains. I think the forecast with the weather that's coming through tonight only shows that it will be continuing to die throughout the day. And in fact, just downwind of us, ultimately on the shoreline near Piombino, it looks like there might even be some afternoon showers. So it's going to be a very, very interesting day out here. But of course, it's a world championship. So what can you expect? It's never going to be easy sailing.
That's right. I mean, the sail selection is vital, but the one thing today, obviously, with 2 races, possibly 3, then you do have the chance to change in between races. But what would you think about the mainsail selection?
We go with 2 mainsails on the water. We have the spare mainsail on the tender, and we have an AP main, an all-purpose main, which we take further uprange. So we might have gone out with that up, seen that the forecast was dying off. We've got our navigator looking at the weather all the time and checking against his forecast. And as they start to see the forecast change and the wind drop, then they might call the chase boat in and put on the light mainsail.
When would they get the last piece of weather information from the coach boat?
There's no information allowed to be shared from the coach boat before the after the warning signal.
Yeah.
So any information from the sail designer Dave Armitage on board our chase boat will be giving his opinion on how the sail's looking, and again we get the information from Quantum, from James on the Quantum chase boat, giving updates on how he feels the mains are set up and if we've got the right one on.
Good. So we're at 2:30. Jen, how does that first beat look?
Interestingly, we've just seen about 7 boats do their final starting line practice, and they were all playing with the pen here. We'd been seeing them for about 15 minutes, all practicing their starts and going all throughout the course. But at this point, the final boats doing their final runs were all trying right at the pen. So I think it might be left-hand favor again today. We have breeze exactly from due south 180, so 5 degrees right from yesterday. And of course, yesterday's race course was a bit longer, so the teams were actually able to tuck into that shore, hoping for that lefty, that Coriolis effect that Fergal was talking about earlier. At this point, I probably think it's true still as well that we've at least got more acceleration to the left of the course. So ultimately, I do think we'll have a big fight out here for this left-hand side. I was speaking with the main trimmer on Platoon earlier, Dirk de Ritter, and he basically ultimately said that they at least thought they would like the left today. Although, at the same point in time, I spoke with Robbie Naismith, the trimmer on sled, and he said anything goes out there. It could be either side. So they're keeping it interesting, and right now they're all setting up to the middle of the line, ready to go, final approach.
That's right, and a little bit more cloud cover today and cooler, so less thermal effect, you'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, the thunderstorms or maybe the possible rain is downwind of us, and I can't tell if it's actually moving offshore, if it's going down the coast of Italy. So I don't think that'll be affecting us now. We just have the 1-minute gun going right now. Currently, it looks like Azzurra, the Italians, actually both blue boats, Azzurra and Brunello are going to be fighting hard for this pin. Brunello just giving themselves a little bit of a short tack up to Platoon's line. Platoon probably going to defend and short tack up to Quantum's line. Everybody close to the pin, but it doesn't look quite as dangerous as yesterday. I think at about 40 seconds yesterday, we were calling that 2 boats were going to have to jibe out. I don't see that at this point. It's just 35 seconds to go right now.
Platoon have got themselves a nice little spot there. They've got Quantum about 2 boats to weather, so space to weather and for the moment to leeward. So chance for Harmel or Spear to drive off into that in the final speed build. And meantime, Quantum staying up under the lee, if you like, of a boat there. They've also got space to drive off into. Meantime, Azzurra coming in on the pin at 9 seconds to go. They have Brunello just above them. Fergal Finlay shaking his head beside me. Nice start for Platoon in terms of position. Good speed from Azzurra off the line at the pin end. Azzurra comfortably win the pin. Fairly solid start from Platoon and also from Quantum Racing, Fergal.
Yeah, I think everyone's game plan there in this slightly dying breeze is to hit the line with as much speed as possible, and I think Quantum, Platoon and Azzurra really got the best ones. Obviously Azzurra really wanted that pin, set up with a nice little gap to leeward of them, and made sure no one was going to go in there. I think they defended really well against Brunello, who were going to have to peel. Wanted that pin, and they absolutely owned it. And but Quantum hit the line with really good pace, and I think we'll see Platoon have to go pretty soon as well if Azzurra pull up to their line.
Jen?
The one thing I noticed there was because Azzurra had to have that little battle and defend against Brunello, it pushed them closer to the line probably earlier than they thought. So ultimately they couldn't pull the trigger and be full speed at the gun, and I think Quantum in the middle of the line with a huge hold of leeward was able to do that. I mean, they had the pace, they had the momentum at the gun that's giving them, just at the moment, it looks like maybe half a boat length of leverage over Azzurra. Azzurra, of course, winning the pin and ultimately the leewardmost boat here. But they're gonna have some work to do to work up to Quantum's line, just because they had to delay their speed build at the start.
A little bit of a righty perhaps just now, but sled also going quite well to windward, and also I think Allegre.
From our positioning, I've just got Azzurra and Quantum and the rest of the fleet kind of hidden behind their sails. I can see Brunello tacked out and is crossing one boat. So someone had a very much so not good start from the boat end of the line. But unfortunately, we're not quite in the position to see anyone else
right.
but these two.
Just starting to see the back of the mainsail of Platoon now, Fergal. They're going to have to peel off out of that position, sandwiched between the Quantum and Azura.
Yeah, I think if there's two boats you don't want to be in between in this position, it's those two. You've got, like Jenny said, they didn't have their fastest start, but they got to the left where they wanted to be, and they'll probably be trying to go into a bit more of a high mode and try and sneak up to Platoon's line and make Platoon tack off. Platoon will then have to duck Quantum, Preveza, Sled, maybe even Gladiator up to windward. So Platoon aren't in the best position there, but they did at least get a clean start with speed. So they're. But it'll be quite a big dip to go behind 5 or 6 boats to windward.
Yeah, Preveza going quite well just now in the meantime. First or second on the virtual at the moment.
Yeah,
off the line quite nicely. Sorsha there in 7th on her virtual.
I think Preveza got a really nice start. Actually, they set up with a nice gap to leeward on them. Room to speed build, and Gladiator was just half a boat length behind them, so they had plenty of room up to weather as well to do a little speed kill. And they've obviously got a bit of work to make up for their not disappointing result, but their tough luck yesterday in going from 1st to 4th.
We're on board there with Sorsha on Peter Harrison's boat in the middle of the fleet, in the middle of the line, or the early lineup. And Azura then, how's Azura looking just now? They appear to be still digging down a little bit, building speed.
Yeah, I think if you look back at their track, you see where they did a little hitch up earlier on, and I think they're just going to be trying to go up and up and up to Quantum's line. And then, as we saw yesterday, when the first boat, Sled here, gets to peel off, we'll see Preveza go, Quantum, Platoon, and Azura all fall over like dominoes.
Sled going quite well, just the weather of Preveza, Jen.
Yeah, it looks like, as you said, there must have been a little right shift because both Sled and Preveza have pulled bow out in front of Quantum Racing and Azura. So I think the middle definitely paying off, or at least the rightmost boats of the left-hand side paying off at the current moment. Quantum maybe even starting to get squeezed, in fact, between Azura and Preveza and falling back. And Platoon ultimately, as you can tell, has fallen back and just finally deciding to tack here. So they tried to hold as long as they could. Maybe they finally got a tiny bit of a lefty to take their shift back. But ultimately, we know, as I said earlier, they wanted this left-hand side. So they'll be disappointed they weren't able to pull off the start they want. But I am absolutely very impressed with Preveza and Sled. I mean, both teams, Preveza had a great day yesterday, but they haven't had a great regatta, nor has Sled. So good on these guys for doing well right now.
That's right. I think, if anything, possibly just a little bit more pressure out there. That's maybe contributing to that little period of extra height. But we're watching Platoon there having to take Stearns out on port, just going round the back of, or we can see them round the back of Quantum Racing just now.
I think the important thing for Sled and Preveza is knowing that they're not having the best regatta and knowing that they've got to keep positive and optimistic and just go into the first race today as a new day and forget what happened yesterday in a Sled not having the best coastal. But the back of the fleet at the moment is all within 2 points of each other, so it's still all to play for sure.
So that situation, Jen, and your Tony Ray, do you push the odds more? Do you push the risk, or how do you evaluate the risk in these situations when you want to try and get back after a bad start to the regatta?
Well, I spoke with Tony Ray yesterday, Andy, and he had this great analogy with basketball and baseball teams, and he said, we're just like that. He said, if the shots aren't falling your way, you can't get disappointed and start yelling at each other. You have to just work on the little things, stay together as a team, and ultimately he was in such a positive mood. I mean, I think they'd been leading the whole way around the course and then lost it, and just kind of a fluke at the island and dropped all the way to 4th. And I think anyone else could have walked off the dock and said, what, that was a horrible day. And he said, we'll take a 4th in the coastal race. It's a brutal race, and we got 4th, so we're happy with that, and we're just going to keep working. So I think really have the right attitude on board, and he gave major props as well to Peter Holmberg, the helmsman for being just such a professional and having such a good work ethic and bringing up the whole motivation level of that team. So I think they'll be happy right now. We saw Quantum and Azura attacking up. Well, we saw Azura tack off first and Quantum follow. And ultimately, they had to duck much of the pack. So Preveza just now heading into the tack 2. We're getting out towards this port hand ley line, but they will have to duck Sorcha, I believe. So it's a tough call there.
It is a tough call. We're looking at Quantum at the moment in 8th place on our virtual. But obviously, as we look at the images of Quantum going out there on port, they seem to be getting into better pressure, Fergal, by the looks of things, a little bit more powered up.
Yeah, they're slightly more heeled going out into the right than they were off the start line. And just seeing them tack back now to get back in with the rest of the fleet. You saw Platoon, if you look back at their track earlier, they had to do a big dip behind 3 boats, the 3 boats that went right earlier, I think Ran, Allegre and Brunellasek. And that will cost them pretty dearly, and it says on our virtual that they're down in 10th. But as they come back, and if there is a little bit of right pressure that the boats picked up earlier, then Gladiator and
I mean, I think the key thing is, or one of the key things at the moment is we talk about that, you know, the left side being favoured, but the left side is probably where the breeze is a little bit more funkier and up and down, probably overall lighter than offshore, and I think that's the balance just now. The shift is inshore, the pressure is offshore, and let's see how it's playing out. But certainly looking at, I think that's Sled going back, isn't it?
Yeah, Sled looking really good. I think the next boat over with the black sails coming over on starboard, maybe Ran. They might be pretty close. Sled will probably do a lee bow, although whoever that is just tacked already. So I think it is Ran who's just tacked underneath Sled. Maybe we'll see Sled tack back onto starboard as Ran look to get up to them.
Certainly Platoon then gone right out to the right side.
Yeah, Platoon and Gladiator going down to the right, thinking Gladiator just had to do a big dip on Platoon to get around the back of them. But obviously thinking the left isn't as strong as it has been, and maybe it's more of an even race course. And if it is an even, steady race course, and you're just looking for pressure, and they've got some good wind spotters on Gladiator. John O'Swain's there calling the wind, and you know Ed's got his head out of the boat, and Jules, the navigator, will be looking out. And if there's something more in the right, then they're obviously going for it.
Seems like Brunellasek may have picked up something. They're up to second just now, Jen. Can you see that?
Yeah, you know, they were just after Sled. They were the boat to go furthest left. So I think they were the boats that were able to choose their own time back. Ultimately, again, I'm not quite sure about Preveza tacking off and ducking. That was probably a huge loss to them, but they were being conservative and sort of following Quantum and Azura. And I think perhaps Quantum and Azura were following Platoon, who had to tack out.
Platoon are coming back just now on starboard and crossing the fleet.
All right, John Kostecki continuing to call the right shots out here.
Yeah, but for me, that's pressure rather than shift, or a little bit of both. We can just see them crossing in front of Preveza, and the old Gladiator not looking too bad as well. But
Go the Gladiator. Yeah, Gladiator just seeing that Quantum was setting up to dip them and lee bowing. We should probably see Quantum tack back to, unless Gladiator didn't do a particularly strong lee bow. But yeah, the rights obviously had a little bit of a pay there. Maybe it is more of a pressure than a shift thing. Still Sled commanding this race, and probably Ran in second. Well, certainly those two in first and second right now.
And Brunellasek second, the mix there definitely.
They're here. But seeing earlier that Platoon were down in 10th. They've made a huge comeback, and whoever that is was going for a massive dip on them. And they've just made Brunellasek do that big dip down to go behind them, and then they decide to tack. It's that's part of the tactic, and making Brunellasek lose out, and it might not have worked out too well for them there for Platoon. I think they did a bit of a weak lee bow, and Brunellasek were going fast at the time, so they got they had the speed to kind of roll over the top, and I don't think that was a great move by Platoon.
So at the moment our leaderboard, Jen, is Sled, Ran Racing and Sorsha. Sorsha have got into this quite nicely from that right side.
Sorsha being out on the left, I think, here, out on the side with me. A big left shift. They were just off of Brunellassek's stern, and I think they've just been able to hip up a tiny bit more into this pressure and left shift. And ultimately they've just been sailing clean of the fleet. So they're all pretty spread across now, though. Platoon planted on Brunellasek sort of the same way that Gladiator planted on Quantum on the far side of the course, and they're both able to hold off. I think, as you were saying, Fergal, the boat that was ducking had enough pace to then translate that into height once they started to be leave out, and I think ultimately they're all out on this port ley line, so there's not really much further to go. They needed to start to set up to actually not overstand. So good moves for all of the fleet. I can't really quite tell who's going to be third. I think it is Sled and Ran Racing in the middle who are dominant at this moment, but the rest all look really close.
Just looking at the tracker here, it looks like Sorcha and Brunellasek think they might be slightly over ley line. What you don't see on the virtual eye here is that there's a safety mark at the top to stop people coming in on a really tight port ley line and tacking in. It's just a little safety buffer, and they'll have to be bearing away if they're pointing at the windward mark. They'll have to bear away to go around this safety mark. So they might be overstanding the safety mark, and we'll see Sorcha and Brunellasek, maybe Platoon and Allegre, who are coming up above Platoon now, coming in with some really good pace, and hoping that they can get a decent slot in all the starboard boats coming over.
You know, at this point, Platoon has gone really bow down. I'm not sure if you can see that on virtual eye, but they couldn't hold with Brunellasek. In fact, Allegre also pinching them off, and they've had to go into foot mode and duck the stern of Allegre and just hope for the best, because yeah, you're right, they can't tack up anymore. They're at this ley line, so that's a tough moment for that team.
Ran it's good to see Ran up in second place. They haven't had their finest regatta and finding themselves tied with Sled for ninth. So those two boats really coming back with a positive attitude. I think Nicholas Sennström and Mr. Akura from Sled will have given a little pep talk and said, "Come on, guys, let's get back into this." They're not too many points away from being back in the mix.
That's
so
right.
So first and the second will really get them back into the regatta a bit more, and hopefully lift the spirits of the rest of the team.
As we were saying yesterday, only 8 points really between 5th, so middle of the fleet, and 10th place, and correspondingly 2 points between 6th and 10th. So really everything to play for.
Preveza just seemed to have fallen back a little bit. They had a great start and they were up with Sled. I don't know if they got bounced around by a couple of boats, but they've by the virtual eye says they're down in 7th, and you just see them up above Quantum. So they'll be having to give way to Quantum when Quantum tack on the starboard ley line.
So we're in race 6 of the Rolex TP52 World Championships here in Scarlino, approaching the first windward mark. First time up. Leader is Sled, Takashi Okura. Hamish Pepper calling tactics with Cameron Dunn as strategist, with Ran Racing in second and Allegre now up in third. Allegre third overall in the standings. Jen, how's this approach to the windward mark shaping up?
You know, the boat's still all on port tack except for Gladiator. They've been the first to tack from the right-hand side, so finally approaching the starboard ley line here. Sled and Ran Racing will easily cross that fleet from the right, and then the question mark will be, I think Allegre should cross as well, but just behind them we have Brunellasek, Sorcha and Platoon, and they're all gonna struggle to decide whether they're crossing that starboard pack or not. So between 4th and 10th is a very close battle, and I think possibly the team that will be in 10th is the team who's leading overall right now, Platoon. They've gone from a very good position up near Allegre to dropping back hard in Allegre's bad air. Quantum, is going to be giving Allegre a little run for their money. Sled is definitely the first around the top mark. They're just about a boat length and a half from this top mark now. So Mr. Akura going to be quite happy with his team today and with Hamish Pepper's tactics. They're rounding now, and it looks like just outside of them is Ran Racing. I can't even see, the boats are so close that they're hidden behind.
Yeah, Ran just on the weather hip coming round. Ran Racing, Nicholas Zenstrom.
Then Allegre did manage to pull off that third, so they crossed the bow of Azura and Quantum, and a second blue boat there, Brunenasek, able to tack in, I think up into fifth here. So that's your top five coming around. Quantum Racing and Provetza rounding the top mark simultaneously. In fact, Provetza having to luff Quantum just a little bit there to get around the marks. And then Gladiator, unfortunately, the right side not working out as well from them. And Sorcha and Platoon fighting for last place. So the left didn't work for Sorcha, and Platoon, that early tack off and then that really hard lee bow that they tried to pull off on the left-hand side, it didn't work for the leaders of this regatta as Sled rounds and hoists a spinnaker in front of us. Really crisp boat handling at the moment on the first three teams. Sled, Ran, and Allegre all beautifully with kite set. Brunenasek having a touch of a problem getting their kite filled as they get rolled by Azura, the Italian team. Azura going to be able to complete this roll, I believe, over Brunenasek, Gazprom, no problem. Just behind Provezza, closely followed by Quantum Racing. Quantum with a beautiful set, again with their kite full before they even finish rounding the mark. Their stern was still at the mark at that point in time. Gladiator having a bit of a problem. In fact, they can't hoist. They have their bowman out on the bowsprit. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, if you know what's going on.
Can't see it right now, but we were just watching Platoon at the moment, and Sorcha going round. Sorcha pretty steady, I think.
Okay, well, they've sorted out what it was. Sean Juggy Cabral has gotten their problem fixed, and the red kite is up. Everyone now kites up, headed downwind out to this left-hand side of the course.
Now all it takes is a sheet, a small little Herbert, or a knot in the sheet, or
a Herbert.
Herbert, yeah. That was one Anthony Nossiter said to me. Knocker. He once told me to get a Herbert out of the sheet, and I had no idea what he was talking about. Took me ages to find the Herbert. Turned out it was a knot.
He'd love that, wouldn't he? Anyway, so good work by Sled then, leading by 50, 60 metres just out from Ran Racing. Allegre then solid in third. Allegre's worst score so far is a sixth, and have gone 4-4-3 over the last three races. So Jenny, Andy Horton doing a great job in the Allegre. You spoke with him yesterday.
Yeah, I spoke with him yesterday, and it was his first event with these guys, so he said he's only really just getting used to the team, and in fact had only just met some of the team members. He did say that their coach, Andrew Palfrey, had set up a really good training session for them before the TP52s were ready to go sailing. He was out sailing in smaller boats with the owner, getting used to speaking with each other and starting practice and maneuvering. And he said it was a really, really good bonding time for the team, a really good time for him and Andy Soriano to sort out their communication. And ultimately, I think that has probably really well paid off. I mean, it means they've been here longer than the other teams, and it means they have started to feel this relationship before this regatta even came in. I asked him as well about his tactics and whether he thought of himself as conservative. I think I made a statement yesterday that I thought of him as conservative, and he said, "You know what? I don't actually know. I think the rest of the tacticians on this course know me better than I do." But then, yeah, ultimately he summed up that maybe he was, and I think it's worked out. You know, they don't have any firsts on their scoreline, but they don't have any 10ths or 9ths either. So doing really well here and sitting in third place.
Yeah, we did see when we first arrived and putting the boats on the dock, there were two of the local match racing boats, like Jenny was just saying, and we've actually seen it before. Allegre taking out local match racing boats or small boats and going out and getting some good time on the water in. And for Andy's first event, sailing with Andy Horton's first event, sailing with Andy Soriano, it is a great little warm up and training session for them to work on their communication.
So, and just to further explain, there are only limited number of training days, official training days you're allowed before the regatta.
Yeah, we're allowed three training days before the official practice race. And what you normally see is the boats go out individually, make sure that all the sails are going up and down, that all the new sails fit, all the systems are working after the boat's been taken apart and rebuilt in the downtime. And just a little bit of a shakedown sail, and then you'll see teams lining up with each other. And the chase boats will put out marks and they'll make start lines, and we'll practice as a team. Normally you get 6-7 boats doing practice races. We'll do 3 practice starts, do a couple of windward lewards, and then go back and start, and then you might see people peel off to go and try something, but everyone joining in to really test themselves and line up.
But overall as well, Jen, talking about Andy Horton, he's very experienced owner-driver tactician, and that relationship with your owner is vital.
Sorry, Andy, I just didn't hear that, but Andy Horton, a great tactician. I mean, he's done match racing, plenty of big boat sailing. They've just jibed, in fact, the front 3 boats jibing here. Sled having led the jibe. As the leader, they had a bit of a gap to second place, and I think ultimately decided that it was good to jibe early and not have the whole fleet go on your breeze behind you, which is what Andy Horton and Allegre tried to do to second placed Ran Racing. They simultaneously jibed, but they just didn't have a low enough lane to end up coming out on Ran's air after the jibe. So I think the front 3 boats, all with clean air behind. Only 2 other boats have jibed at this point. It's Provezza and Quantum Racing towards the back of the pack. And perhaps there was a small shift that the leaders are going to take to jibe on, or that they took to jibe on, because they are definitely not ley line yet. So I think they might have just gone for it with a little shift. And we've got the guys continuing on starboard is a pack of about 4 boats that are fighting with each other. So they don't have the opportunity to jibe yet.
And in the meantime, in the terms of the overall standings, then Platoon presently in 9th place, and Quantum Racing in 7th place. So every place, every gain, every loss is critical.
And it is still really tight there. The back 5th through 10th are very close, and I think, as we've seen, it's a really tricky race course. On that last upwind, we saw Platoon go from somewhere about 3rd to 10th, so easily anything could happen on this downwind and again on the upwind. I still do think that this left side is probably going to pay off. I think a slightly better pressure out here, and we saw the leader sled come from the left, almost the far left, and so we'll see. It'll be an interesting battle when they go around which mark to pick, and when it's that close between the 5th through 10th, that really matters. That mark rounding, the ability to get clean air and have a clean lane right afterwards. But just now, still going downwind. Everyone looking to have good pressure, except for perhaps Brunenasek just got jibed on from the 2nd to last placed boat. But ultimately, the front of the pack sled, are they starting to run away with this a little bit, Andy?
A little bit. They're about 45, 50 metres ahead. Is the breeze easing as you come down the track, or is it fairly solid down to this first gate?
It feels like it's been easing all afternoon. In fact, it was maybe 10, 11 knots when we were maybe it was 12 knots when we were starting out, and it feels now more like 11 or 10. So I think the teams will be keeping that in mind. I mean, originally the forecast for today had 20 and maybe even more, gusting to 25 knots, and then all of a sudden, as we came into this morning and into 11 o'clock dock out time, the forecast was dropping all the time and was showing perhaps a complete die-off this evening. Now let's hope we get our 2 races in before that happens, but I think that's the more accurate forecast. As we've seen, it has already started to die off and been much lighter than the anticipated forecast last night. The windy day that the teams were prepping for and eating for at our crew dinner last night didn't really show up for us.
Speak for yourself. But for sure, just looking at the images just now, we saw Gladiator now of Ran Racing and Provezza, Quantum Racing, and I think it's Allegra in the middle.
Allegra and Provezza. I think from the last shot, these guys look quite slow here and pretty upright. Actually, Gladiator, who sailed the furthest, maybe sailed a little longer, maybe beyond the ley line, so they can come in with a bit more pace in this dying breeze. But the last shots of Gladiator saw that little left-hand side hopefully paying, not being too biased, but hopefully paying for the boats who went in there to come in with a bit more pressure and pace. You see Brunella second, Gladiator 10.5, Gladiator's doing 11 knots, Sled's out there, well, they're doing 10, but the boats in the middle are only doing 9 knots, and Gladiator could come in with a bit more pace and pressure, and they'll be looking to take a few scalps down there.
But for sure, just going to say the images perhaps we expected in these local rain showers, maybe not too far away.
Yeah, it'd be a shame if the rain comes along and kind of sucks the wind out of the race course. It'll be a real shame. But they've still got a whole beat and run to go, and hopefully the wind gods allow us to finish this race and get another decent one in as well. Allegre and Ran, if you look at their trackers, and probably Provezza and Quantum, you've seen them being let down to the mark, being able to gain a little on sled maybe. You see from early on, Allegre have come right down onto Ran's line. They started above them and they've been able to sail without too much sacrifice of speed. And Platoon doing it to Azura, being able to get down, and from this image you see Gladiators beyond the ley line, so they're going to be coming in with a bit more pace.
So Jen, we're just looking at Nicholas Zenstrom steering the Ran Racing, coming down to this first leeward gate in second place. Talk us through this first gate.
Well, you should just see a very close cross there with Nicholas Sundstrom just behind Sled and Takashi Akura. I think that's the danger of being the leader and choosing to jibe early, as if you're jibing away from the favored side. So I think good moves on Adrian Stead and Ran Racing to hold a bit further. I think that was a big game for the Swedish team. We're seeing the U.S. white boat Sled here just going jib up. They will come around the mark that we are closer to, this left-hand mark, and ultimately go to what I think is the favored side. And it looks like perhaps, well, Ran Racing has had to jibe either way for the bottom mark, so they'll have the ability to choose whether they want to jibe for that right side and head away from Sled and get a split, or whether they concede, follow into this left-hand mark and do a right-hand turn. I think it looks like, actually no, I'm wrong. I think it looks like they're going to go for the jibe around that right side mark. So taking the early split, they do have a bit of distance to third place. Allegre still about 2, maybe 3 boat lengths behind. So that's a decent move again for Adrian Stead, just choosing to split a little bit from the leaders, hoping for some leverage, hoping to gain. And ultimately for them, Allegre following to that right-hand mark. So that makes them more confident in that choice, in that second decision. Now here is a very close battle for fourth. We've got Azura closer to us, the Italian team, the blue boat, bow number 2, jibing around, which is the same side they went up on the upwind until tacking, and then Provezza on the far side, the Turkish boat, rounding to the right. Both excellent drops there. That was really, really nice crew work to see those two boats. Quantum Racing and Brunello again tying around the 2 marks. Quantum to the right, Brunello Gazprom to the left here. Everyone looking really crisp today. In fact, I think this medium to light breeze is relatively easy for crew work, but Platoon with almost an early drop at that moment. Kite is well in before the rest of the teams had theirs in, but they have gained. The current leaders of this regatta were last at the top marks, and they've at least now moved up to 8th. So we see Sorcha, and then unfortunately Fergal, the final team here, that far overstand downwind didn't quite work out for the Red Spinnakers and the guys on board Gladiator.
I think coupled with obviously a problem at the top, which forced them to be a little higher than the rest of the fleet when they had the problem getting the kite up, has impacted their run a fair bit, and they've obviously lost Platoon and Sorcha. But Platoon going round in last place, just chipping away, taking two scalps there, and they'll be looking to get a couple more upwind, trying to get back into Quantum. They'll be happy that Quantum, as per the virtual eye, is only 1 place in front of them. if they're going to have a bad result, they at least want Quantum to have a bad result as well. And strategically, they'll be probably looking to stay in touch with Quantum and not do anything too different. And
Meantime, Jen, Azzurra taking a place down that run, getting themselves up to 4th place ahead of Brunellesec. So the Italian team just chipping away quite nicely.
Yeah, and I think, as Fergal just said, the 3 of those guys all playing with each other. Quantum tacked from the right-hand side. Just after they tacked, Platoon and John Kostecki tacked towards Quantum, and the Italians tacked towards them as well. The Italians, I'm seeing a bowman out on the bowsprit, although now he's run back, so they had a little bit of an issue, maybe spinnaker sheet under the bowsprit. They just needed to clean that up, but I do think that they will have an easy cross over Quantum Racing, and maybe then they'll be able to decide whether to play the game back out to the left. I think the Italians only had to tack because they didn't have a perfect rounding lane-wise, and so they were in the bad air of Brunellesec Gazprom. So whether they decided to go and cover Quantum and play the long game for this 52 Super Series, or whether they were just having to tack out for bad air, unclear. We'll see once they cross Quantum what their decision is, and we'll know a bit more about what game they're playing.
Yeah, a little bit of a righty there. We're looking at Prevetsa furthest to the right. Seem to be sailing a couple of degrees higher just now. Again, that may be pressure. But Sled walking away just now. I think they're 60, 70 metres or over 75 metres ahead now.
And they're sending it out to the left here. Sled with no game plan at the current moment, at least, of tacking back for a consolidation tack across the fleet. And I think if you're comfortable with the left, which at least I seem to be, I think that's a decent move so far. At some point, maybe they get enough of a header that they decide they'll go for the consolidation over Rand Racing at least. But you don't want to give up too much distance in the tacking game.
I think they'll be hoping that they've made that decision to go out to the left-hand side, and they've gone so far now that they're probably looking back on the fleet and going, "Oh, maybe have we gone too far?" Or as if Jenny says she's comfortable with the left, they obviously are too. But if they hook into any little right, and you see here that Rand looks slightly higher in the middle of the course than Brunellesec. So if there is a slight right, then Sled have got a long way to come back, and the boats Platoon and Azzurra and Allegre over on the right will be hoping that they get more of a right. I think if you looked at Allegre's line from when they tacked in the tracker, it looks like they've picked up a little right there.
And Platoon having a go over there as well. Yeah, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Well, the forecast today does show it going from the south to the southeast throughout the afternoon, so it makes for a hard race course. So you have to question whether you like the left, whether you think you'll still get lefties off the land, whether there's more acceleration here, or whether the breeze is going to be going right throughout the day. So do you stick with that right? That's a tough call. I think Sled might be tacking soon. They've just sent 2 or 3 people inboard, so yeah, Sled going for the tack.
Could see Rand making a nice gain on Sled here. We'll see the gap closing. It started off up at 60 metres, and it's going to come down and down. I think the Sled are probably still going to be just in front, but Rand making nice gains just in that little right that you see on their track. Sled doing quite a big dip just to try and get the speed back up after their tack.
Yeah, certainly closed. Rand Racing have closed up a little bit of distance there. And for me, still a bit more pressure and shift over there on that right side. Look, I think that's Allegre, isn't it?
Yeah, Allegre having quite a quiet. People keep saying conservative, but they're just doing their own thing, being able to sail their own race, not getting into any small battles, and they're having a good race up in third.
I spoke with Matteo Aguardo this morning, the bowman on Allegre. He was saying also this new rig which was fitted after Miami, so this is the first regatta with the new mast. Is definitely making a difference, and they're feeling quicker.
We were talking yesterday about Allegre's new rig, and apparently I said it was stiff a lot. And I was making the chef from the Allegre team giggle because I was saying stiff a lot. So I'm not allowed to say stiff anymore, but I managed to say it at least 5 times now.
Yeah, so we're seeing Ran Racing taking over the lead in this race on the virtual just now, Jen. Allegre a close third, so nothing in it really at the top of the table just now. Azura still chipping away in 4th. Quantum have got themselves up to 5th, now with 3 boats, or 2 boats between them and Platoon.
I think it'll be a tough call when Ran Racing tacks back, because they'll lose the distance in the tack and then they'll be on port. So whether Sled is still going to be able to come back from the right-hand side on starboard tack and cross Ran Racing. Ran, the Swedish team, going for the tack right now. In fact, might change the virtual, I don't know, but they will now be the leftmost boat, at least of the lead pack. Gladiator down the field a little bit, still coming out to the left, but ultimately very, very close, I think, still for those front 2. And Allegre, yeah, the stealth team, the team that just keeps getting up there. Well, and I guess because they have a good mast and they're feeling fast.
Yes, Sled taking the lead back over, but actually Allegre now moving up to 2nd. There's only about 20 metres between 1st and 3rd just now.
It seems like the middle of the course is really the place to be. The guys who have come up the middle and just work the shifts instead of deciding that one side of the course is better than the other. I think Allegre and probably Provezza are going to move up. We saw them down in 7th, 8th earlier. They went round the bottom mark in 5th. They're back in that position, but on the virtual tracker they were further down. And one thing Provezza have got to do is really consolidate their results higher because of that redress they got on the first race. That's going to change every day. So they want to get higher and higher to bring that redress result up as well.
Yeah. So the mid-fleet just now, I think Provezza 5th place. Quantum and Platoon now 6th and 7th. What a fascinating race. There's really absolutely nothing in it all the way through, all these private battles.
Yeah, I think now is the end of the regattas looming, and only four more races left to go. And we said yesterday this is when the strategy starts, and you pick your personal battles with the boats around you. And this will probably be the last race we see where everyone's just sailing their own race, and maybe the next one. When people start to look at the big picture in the scoreboard, we might see a few more tacking battles and maybe a bit of match racing at the start.
So just a quick response to about one of our questions coming in on the social networks. Somebody asking about whether you can watch replays of the races. For a TV replay, you can go to the YouTube channel, and all the races are on the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/52 Super Series. And in virtual eye tracking, you can go to the 52superseries.com website and /live, or you can watch it on the app. So there are plenty of opportunities and ways to rewatch the previous races and analyse what goes on or what went on. Nice shots just now, bow on from Ran Racing. Ran Racing now in 3rd. Really tit for tat coming up this final beat. How's the final stage up to this 2nd windward mark looking, Jen?
Well, you guys were talking about personal battles, and we've just seen a couple here. We saw Sled come up and park on Allegre, and Allegre then park on Ran. And I think, unfortunately, for Ran Racing, it looks like they've just done about 4 tacks in the last 2 minutes. So they weren't quite able to get clear and get across Allegre, and it's hurt them a little bit, I think. That wasn't exactly what they were hoping for. It wasn't what Adrian said probably wanted, but they just weren't able to pull it off. So I think it's like Fergal said, there was some shifts up the middle of that upwind that Allegre were able to use to their advantage just to get ahead of Ran. I'm not sure that it was one side or the other, just some numbers that they played better, because we still saw Sled from the left gain and cross ran, but then we saw Allegre from the right gain and cross ran. Maybe also the Swedish team having a bit of boat speed problems. So ultimately, the white boat pulling into first, perhaps with a bigger lead over now Allegre in second, and then Ran Racing in third. And I think maybe Provezza has gotten up to fourth here out on the left.
Yep.
Pretty close with Azura when Azura attacked back onto starboard and Provezza come back on port. And we might see a pretty close, either a dip from Provezza or a close cross across the front of Azura. But yeah, with Allegre and Ran just having that little tacking battle for second, and Allegre forcing Ran back out onto the left side a bit. It is giving Sled that little opportunity, and their lead's grown up to 60 meters now, and it was down to just 20. And obviously at one point it said that Ran were in front, but now they're just being allowed to extend, and they're looking pretty comfortable there at the moment.
So Sled's best day so far was on that opening day when they finished fourth. Otherwise it's been 9-7, 9-7, so this would be a nice fillip for the team from the New York Yacht Club, Mr. Takashi Akura.
I think a lot of the fleet will be looking back and seeing that Platoon and Quantum aren't having the best race back in 6th and 7th, and it will just bring their points higher up. And certainly for boats like Allegre, you see the projected table there. It puts Allegre far more in touch with first place.
Only 4 points behind Quantum. So as we said a few times, Allegre second here last year, and certainly in touch with second place if they could hold on in this race.
You see Sorcha and Brennanasek going to have a pretty close cross, but I think Brennanasek have just tacked off before that comes together. Quantum not having their best race at the moment. I think Sled will just take this all the way out to the starboard ley line now. Not too far to go. We'll probably see them tack back and in on the starboard ley line in the next couple of seconds. Just see the trimmers going in now, ready to. I think the conditions are light enough now that you'll see a bit more of a roll tack on the boat. People staying to leeward a little longer, and then there'll be one person in charge of the weight, calling the weight up. Just trying to get that little pump as you did in your lasers as sailing dinghies when they were younger.
I still do. Allegedly. Anyway, just watching that tack from Sled. A question from Nathan from YouTube. Explain the redress situation with Provezza. Fergal, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so on the first day, the first race, Provezza were called over the line, and going back to drone footage, they were granted redress, and in the redress, they'll get average points. So at the moment, their average points throughout the regatta is a 7th. And if they get a first, then they'll obviously bring it up, and their final result.
So effectively, it's average points for the races sailed.
Yeah,
after the incident. But the point was, it's the first time I think we've had drone footage in the 52 Super Series for the start line, showing that the flag was coming down, I think, or just still up.
Yeah, I think. I don't think it'll be something that's used all the time. It's certainly not a race committee thing, but it was from it was a private drone from one of the teams, and it's totally up to the race officer if she grants out redress. She didn't have to, but it was certainly the right thing for her to do.
So Sled leading, Jen, just talk us through this windward mark now. Mark 3, the final top mark of this race.
Yep, Sled, the white boat, bow number 6, just coming directly towards our line. They will round this offset, set their kite. It is much lighter now. I think we've only got about 8 knots, so they might even have gone to the lightest spinnakers, the A1.5s at this point in time. You can see kite going up even earlier. Should fill. Yeah, beautiful set there. Fill just as they round the mark. happy on board sled because they've accelerated to almost a 2.5, 3 boat length lead here, Andy.
That's right, and Allegra then leading Ran Racing around the offset mark by about a boat length and a half perhaps. Then looks like Azura just behind Ran Racing.
It is, in fact. Both those boats, Allegre and Azura, had a great upwind. Allegre moving from third into second over Ran Racing. Azura actually having a little bit of a situation here with Provezza. Provezza just gets room, I think, and is able to force Azura wide at the offset mark. And then Azura rolled down over the top of Provezza there. Both boats setting and Provezza definitely with an overlap inside here. Their bowman calling distance and Tony Ray flagging. So we might see some umpire action here. Green flag. Green flag. I think Azura gave them plenty of room. So you might as well go for it if you're Tony Ray. There's no harm in flying that protest flag. But yeah, Azura in the clean. Just behind Provezza, Quantum Racing round in 6th, and then followed by Platoon in 7th. A bit of a distance there. Then we've got Sorcha, Bernenasek drop back, and Gladiator in 10th.
I think we saw from that drone footage that we could see here that it was, like Jenny said, definitely worth giving the flag, but from our point of view here on screen, Azura definitely gave them plenty of room. And that was a good call by the umpire to green flag that. Just not quite full hoist on the spinnaker there on Gladiator. Finally gets up there, but yeah, it's a long way back to the good ship. Sled looking like they're going to do the same again. They did that slightly earlier jibe going out to the left downwind, and Allegre going a little further.
So we're looking at the distance sailed in this race, Ferg.
Yeah, it's obviously they're a little further in front, but it's showing that they've actually sailed 0.2 of a kilometre more than everyone else. Maybe that's a shift thing where you sail a little further into a left shift. Obviously, going up the middle is the shortest distance. But they went really hard left up the first beat. Came out in the middle, but sailed very far up the left, and then the second beat we saw them go all the way out to the left again, and just doing a couple of tacks. But sailing a longer distance without so many tacks and manoeuvres is obviously working out for them and is giving them a bit of room to extend.
So Quantum now have one boat between them and Platoon on our leaderboard at the moment, battling with Provezza. How's it looking down to the finish, Jen?
It's interesting setup here. Allegre almost the last to jibe of the leaders. So it was sled first, then Ran Racing, Azura behind, Quantum behind, and then ultimately Allegre. And I think it might be a dangerous setup. If it gets any lighter than this, it means they're to leeward of everyone else. They might get the bad air of almost 3 or 4 boats above them. So I think that'll be the situation for us to be watching as it develops, whether Allegre starts to lose on the leader line to the second place team. I think Sled's got this in the bag. I mean, again, you can never say that in a sailboat race, especially in light air.
You just did.
But it looks like they're comfortable. Knock on wood, right?
Exactly, exactly. But we can see Azura going through the back of our picture there with quite good speed.
Yeah, they were one of the first to jibe out, and I think they looked really comfortable actually on that far side. As the breeze dies, it doesn't feel as left favored anymore. I think perhaps it's maybe staying stronger, the sea breeze staying better out on the race course in the middle, and we have huge cumulus clouds all around now, both over the island of Elba and over the Piombino promontory. We didn't have those at the start of the race, so it does bode well for the sea breeze to stay, but it is definitely dying out a little bit as we sail.
I think given that, and obviously Maria's looking, and the rest of the race team are looking over at Elba and looking at these clouds develop, and we might see a bit of a longer gap just to see what settles between the
longer gap, because they were not under a huge time pressure. 2 o'clock local time, just come into 2 o'clock. So maybe we should just wait and see how the breeze develops, and if it is going to build, then let's sail in the maximum pressure for the day if we can.
Allegro don't look too bad down that bottom corner. Although we saw what happened to Gladiator on the first run. They went all the way out to the right downwind and into that corner, overstanding, and it didn't pay off for them so much. It looked good at the beginning and then not so good at the end. And Allegro will be hoping that doesn't happen to them.
So the moment between Platoon and Quantum Racing, if you're John Kostecki, what do you do just now?
Well, you've got to keep them in your sights, and
exactly.
And you know you can't just follow them down the run, because you're not just going to overtake them on pure speed. So you've got to go the different side of the course, but at the same time be slightly conservative and make sure that they're not going to be able to put any boats in between you. I mean, Quantum look like they're hunting Azura still, but Platoon in the middle with Provezza will be hoping they can get up to them and maybe roll them towards the end or jibe on top of them. So it's looking really light on sled there. You see a lot of the guys sitting down to leeward, just try to induce some heel into the boat, and if it gets any lighter, you'd start to see the guys go downstairs, get the weight even lower around the keel, but sitting down to leeward downstairs. So don't be alarmed if you see only 2 people sailing the boat at one point.
You can certainly get some nice shots there of these big cumulus clouds in the background. Sled then setting up for their jibe. Jen?
You see there on sled the totally different style of jibing in the light wind in comparison to the heavier breeze. Is you see someone holding onto that vang strut, holding the boom out so the kite can come over first. Call it a late main jibe, and letting the kite come over, fill first, and then letting the mainsail flap down along with the body weight, and getting a good roll into the boat and pumping the boat forward. And they've just been fairly conservative jibing in front of Allegro, and making sure that they're just keeping a hold on that first. But the gap for second place, Ran and Allegro, is going to be really tight here. This is going to be a tight cross, and I think you'd probably see Ran coming in and jibing on top of Allegro and trying just to hold that speed through the jibe and take their air and just roll them down at the end. But we could see a really close finish between Ran and Allegro.
Jen, Ran and Allegro, how's it looking?
Yeah, I think it's gotten tight altogether. I mean, sled now maybe only 2.5 boat lengths in front of Allegro as well. So maybe it didn't pay to jibe early for the leaders. Ran Racing coming in and jibing at the exact moment here. So possibly Ran Racing trying to affect sled instead of Allegro. They've jibed early enough. To me, it looks like they're aiming for sled's line, and ultimately they will then, if they slow sled down enough, Allegro just astern of sled. There's a full-on battle between those 3 boats for first, and we still have a bit of distance to the finish line. We've got just the leeward marks about 15 boat lengths for us. The finish line another another 100 boat lengths past that. So still lots of time to play for those 3 boats to figure out who's actually going to cross the line first in this first race of the day.
Exactly. In the middle of the fleet, Zura just losing out to Kravetsa. Meantime, Platoon ahead of Quantum. So about 750 metres, 770 metres to go to the finish line, and really it's all in the balance.
It's just showing, we've said it a lot before, but showing how tight the fleet really is. Even in the later stages of the regatta, people are starting to get tired, and watching in these lighter conditions is tricky. But everyone really concentrating hard and trying to compress the whole fleet, and even Platoon and Quantum being further back in this race is compressing the fleet tighter, which means first is far more reachable than it was yesterday.
It looks at the moment like Sled is in a good groove downwind. We saw Run Racing jibe and try to take their breeze, but I think they haven't quite pulled it off. In fact, they're dropping back a little bit, and it doesn't look like they're affecting Allegre either. So an interesting position on the choice there for Adrian Stead and Rand Racing to jibe where they did, because they didn't ultimately affect the leaders badly at all. Sled pulling out now, and they're going to have to, maybe they're just going for a low mode here to make sure that they blanket Allegre. Maybe they jibed high so they wouldn't miss it, and then now are soaking low and hard to try at the last second to get Allegre, as they're coming down only now about 15 boat lengths to the finish line.
That's right, they're certainly coming down on Allegre progressively. Little bit slower just now, obviously Allegre sailing a higher angle. Meantime, it looks good for Sled. But Jen, talk us through to the finish now, and give us a finishing order as everybody comes through. So Sled leading.
Sled leading, still about 10 boat lengths to the finish line. I think, in fact, they might need to jibe one more time to this finish. It looks like they are possibly just laying the race committee, but they don't want to be going for a low mode right now, because they've got, as we've said, these 2 boats close behind them. So Sled, bow number 6, the white boat, going to have to jibe, and yes, everyone's just standing up here getting ready for it. But I think they're going a bit early, considering they're going to be able to lay the pin from there, but they're letting the 2 guys behind get a bit closer than would feel comfortable, and they are actually they're early on the pin to give themselves a build angle here. So dangerous there for Sled, but they've got a big enough distance behind, and ultimately now they are actually up to speed. They will be crossing the line, and the 2 boats behind, of course, have to jibe as well. Sled not quite to the finish line yet, and behind them, Rand Racing initiating the jibe. Sled crossing through in 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1. White boat Sled, first win of this regatta, and just behind, a very tight battle between Allegre and Rand Racing. Rand initiated the jibe, Allegre defended. They are almost being rolled by the black boat, Rand Racing. The Swedes trying at the last second to any second that they can do, but I think no. Bow 19 crossing now. Allegre, the stealth boat so far of this regatta, with their best finish so far, a 2nd place, and Ron Racing, I believe, as well with their best finish, a 3rd place for Niklas Enstrom and the Swedish team. Now the battle is on behind for 4th. We've got 3 boats coming in from the right and 3 boats coming in from the left. Closest to me, Preveza, just behind Preveza, Quantum Racing, then a bit of a gap to Brunenasek. On the far side, Azura, just behind Platoon, and I cannot tell at this exact moment whether it is Preveza on our side or Azura on the far side. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, Andy.
Looks like Preveza.
No, I think Azura will get this first.
Azura will get it,
and then it'll be close between Preveza and Platoon. I think Preveza will just get it, but Azura 4th, Preveza 5th, and then I think Platoon got up to 6th and Quantum 7.
Yeah. So
that is how it looks like, yes, exactly.
So Platoon get through Quantum Racing. But another point for them at the top of the table. Disappointing for Terry Hutchison and the team on Quantum Racing. Made a nice start though, didn't they, Jen? And then it didn't get the lane.
Yeah, and sort of they tacked off early and played the game they like, which was hang with Azura, but they both had tacked away from that favored left-hand side. I think, again, you guys always talk about how Platoon is known for their downwind speed. I spoke with Jordy Calafat yesterday as well, and he said they're feeling really fast downwind. So maybe they're happy to have a downwind finish because it means they can use that tool in their arsenal. Just behind, Sorcha crossing for 7th place. Bernenicek Gazprom, who was up there probably at least in 5th, if not maybe in 3rd on that first upwind, has dropped all the way to 9th. So a tough race there for Morgan Larson, and a tougher race, in fact, for Gladiator and the red boat just behind the camera. We can see a red spinnaker, and they've got about 10 boat lengths of distance. So it's going to be really an interesting debrief on board for Ed Baird and Tony Langley. But you've got to just debrief, get over it, regroup, and then maybe, grab some food and some water before you get into race 2 of the day and the final race of the day. Can't focus on those things unless maybe you're sled, then you're happy.
Yeah, I mean, their process is the same. They debrief, you put your win behind you, and you focus on the next race.
Absolutely. And I think the same. You can't stay stuck on that either. If you've won the race and you allow everyone to celebrate too much and get too excited, then your brain's not right in the mental state either for the next race. So most of the teams just that's the focus, is do what we do for the next race. So whether it's talk about the sail decision, talk about which side of the line, which side of the course, and then start your starting runs and maybe even sail a little bit of the upwind. I mean, especially as this breeze is getting lighter and lighter, it is a very different start line, and it'll be a very different race than what we just saw.
So we think that we'll probably wait for a little bit longer and see what happens with the breeze, maybe a bit more of a delay. But Fergal, the leaderboard just now, showing an extra point then since the start to Platoon then. Not as perhaps as it looked it was going to be in the early stages of the race, but it turns out to be quite good for Platoon.
Yeah, I mean, they were at one point, they were right at the back. They were in 10th, and I don't want to. We've said it quite a lot, but they chip away. They don't let anything get them down, and they went from 10th to 6th. It's obviously not the consistency that they wanted. They obviously want to be up in the top 5 at least, but it brings the top 3 much closer together. Only 7 points back to Alegre. And the other thing it shows is how Ran and Sled, who were tied this morning in 9th place, have gone up, and now 5th to 7th is 2 points apart. 5th to 8th is 3 points. So it's still all super compressed, and every result counts now.
So there we have the leaderboard after that race. Platoon then leading now in 17 points, extend by 1 point. Quantum Racing on 20 points. Alegre on 24. Azzurra on 28, Sled 37, 38 for Gladiator, Ran Racing 39, 40 for Preveza, 42 for Sorcha, and Brunanasek now at the bottom of the table on 43. But as you said, just 5 points between 6th and 10th, and every place counts. But another good job from the Platoon team.
Yeah, definitely. I think, obviously Sled winning the race, but to gain four places throughout the race, you'd say they were the team who had probably one of the better races. Sled obviously got off clean, and they held their position from the start all the way to the end. So all credit to them. But to pick yourself up from 10th on the first beat to midway through the fleet is amazing, especially in this fleet.
And Jen, a huge amount of experience on board the Platoon team, and it's really working like clockwork just now.
Yeah, we spoke about it on day 1, but that threesome of John Kostecki, Dirk de Ritter, and Ross Harlcrow, they know each other quite well. They're ultimately family, and they've been sailing together since they won the Volvo on Ilbrook. So 20 years of experience. We spoke yesterday about whether teams need to talk a lot or yell on board, or whether some teams who've sailed together for so long might not ever say anything because they're like they've got a telepathy, and I think those guys really do seem to have that, and I think any owner might be happy to have them on board, and certainly it looks to be that way at the current moment for Harm Muller-Spreer. I think you're happy when a team goes from 10th to 5th, and we have to remember that was a really tough upwind for Platoon. I mean, they were at one point almost up to 3rd, and then it was just one situation where they were trying to, I think with Brunanasek, they were trying to cross Brunanasek going for a duck, and then they decided to leave out instead, and they couldn't live there. because Allegre was just in front, so they'd had to pull off a very close lead bow, and then they were stuck with Piggy in the middle situation, and they dropped back from sort of third or fourth to 10th right there, right in the last quarter of the beat. So to get back up into almost the situation they had started in, very, very good race for those guys.
Yep, going from strength to strength just now, the platoon team leading the regatta, as we've seen before. But Fergal, it's really all about the next three races, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in Miami, I think the key thing there was it was fairly light in the last day, and that's the Achilles heel, or it has been the Achilles heel for the platoon team.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously started this regatta really well, and they'll be just hoping that sixth is just a glitch, and they have to come back and get back into the top three. But you know, the fleet's so tight that you can't just expect to go out and get these top three results. So hopefully they haven't been getting complacent on board.
Absolutely. And I think the key point, as much as anything, is that there's a certain confidence comes from having been 10th and getting up to 6th, just as much as if you go out and bang in a top three.
Yeah,
and that gives
absolutely.
them that confidence that perhaps they've struggled in the last days of regattas before. I remember back in Puerto Portals of the World's there, then the platoon was leading at different points, and they kind of faltered in the last day. And this has been a little bit of a pattern, as it has been with other boats, but really bolstering their charge just now.
Yeah.
I think we're going to take a break. We'll join us again in a short while. Watch the social media, and we'll update you as and when we come into the next race. Thank you very much. Join us shortly. Welcome back to Scarlino for the penultimate day of racing for the Rolex TP52 World Championship, and Platoon leading the regatta still from Quantum Racing by virtue of the fact that they beat Quantum Racing in that race. A nice win for Sled for Takashi Akura, and we're heading out onto the water, hopefully going to join Jenny Tulloch. Jen, how are the conditions looking now?
You know, they died off a little bit just at the end of that start. At the end of that race, we saw the boats coming downwind and almost 5 or 6 knots, and then in this little lunch break or the snack break period of time, it's actually started to build again. So it's up into maybe more like 7 or 8. But I think what we were talking about earlier, the cumulus clouds being good for a sea breeze, I think means we're not seeing the complete die-off that maybe some of the forecasts were calling for, which is good news for us as we only have about 3 minutes to the start of this next race. I think this breeze should hold for the hour and a half that we need it to.
And how's the beat looking this first windward leg? I think the winged axis is still at 180.
Yeah, Maria Torrio, the principal race officer, calling for a 180. I think she said 1.8, although I couldn't quite hear it on the radio. Ultimately, I don't think we will see the left be quite as favored. We have a forecast that shows that it'll be going right as it dies this afternoon, so I do think we might see that with the sea breeze. Don't know for sure, though. We have seen the left pay in the majority of this week of racing out here just off of the marina of Scarlino, so it's going to be interesting to see what works in this first upwind.
Fergal, your thoughts in the build-up into this race?
Oh, I think people will have seen in the last race, the last 2 beats, that the middle paid. And certainly the left, as Jenny said, wasn't as strong as it has been previously in the week. And when the sea breeze does start to fill in, it gets pulled over Elba and kind of accelerates in from the right. So, you know, all the guys out on the water, they'll know this information, but certainly be looking more to the middle of the course than the pin end.
Certainly looking a little bit lighter than some of the forecasts, and probably lighter than the previous start, Jenny.
Well, you know, this morning we had heard last night some forecasts for 20, maybe even up to 25 knots. The teams were discussing whether it would be gnarly enough that they wouldn't get out of the marina. I think regardless, from the south, it wouldn't have been a problem even if it was that windy. But then right before they left the dock, I was talking to the bow team of Gladiator, Nick Blackman and Sean Dougie Couvreau, and they had both told me that their forecast was showing this die-off this afternoon. And I went back and looked on the computer, and yeah, the forecast had updated throughout the morning to call for this, the 15 to 16 dying to about, some of them had it dying to about 5, but right now we definitely have a good 7 or 8 knots. And I think with only 1:10 to go, the team's looking not so pin biased anymore. In fact, there's not that fleet of 6 boats fighting for the pin here. Quantum just lining up towards the middle of the line, although they always go for the low density start, as you call it. And I think Azura going up for the right hand side of the boat. We see Azura on port tack fighting hard for maybe what's going to be the boat end of the line. They've just face planted Sled, the winners of the last race, and Sled had won from a bit of the middle of the pack last time, although they had used that to go out to the left-hand side. But coming up on just 35 seconds to go here, Gladiator, the boat closest to us at the pen, Sled, the boat closest to the boat. It's going to be anyone's call to see what works here.
Breeze does seem to be quite right, though, by the looks of things, perhaps.
You know, even just in the last 1.5 minutes, maybe it's gone right. So I don't think this will call for a postponement, but it might just be a little 10-degree righty that will definitely favor at this point the boats on the boat end, accelerating with just 10 seconds to go. It looks like Azura, the boat to the boat, is going to have a better start than Sled. The middle of the line, Sorcha, in fact, looking like they're going to pull it off. And then just near us, Platoon, and at the pin end, Gladiator. But I think Sorcha, with the watch on their mainsail and their jib, looks like they had a good start in the middle, and then they're getting a little bit pinched off right now by Gladiator, the boat in our vision, and just to windward of Gladiator was Platoon, the current overall leader. So I can't tell if you guys can see whether the left or the right side actually looks better after that start, Andy.
Fergal.
Oh, I think everyone's probably got a pretty even start. Azura coming into our shot now has had the best start. They fought pretty hard to get the committee boat end. They really wanted it, and they pulled off a great start with great speed. You know, like Jenny said, that the right might be a little bit more paid, so you wouldn't see people fighting for the pin so much. Maybe Gladiator made a conservative start by coming in, big gap to leeward, and coming in with a bit more speed. You see them going bow forward. I mean, Gladiator have a good bit of control over Platoon. I think Platoon will struggle to live where they are at the moment. You know, that boat with being sailed by Gladiator is very, very strong in these light conditions, and they've got a good high mode in less than 10 knots. So Platoon might struggle to live where they are, and Sorcha as well. You just see on board Sorcha now, they're actually getting pulled down into Platoon all the time. So I think we'll be seeing Sorcha the next boat to peel off, as long as they've got room to weather off them. I think Quantum just up to weather off them. But no, it's a pretty even start, but won by Azura.
Yeah, Jenny, your thoughts? How's it looking?
Well, from here, it absolutely looks like the Italians on Azura are punched. I mean, they called it perfectly at the boat. I think they were able to nail sled into the corner and go for it with their speed and their momentum. Exactly the start they weren't able to have last time when we saw Quantum Racing use a big hole in the middle and accelerate and be full speed at gun. That was Azura's this time. And I think the Italians maybe a little bit fired up. They've got their sights on winning this regatta. I mean, it's their home country, it's their home venue that they want to be competing in well, and they haven't ultimately had the best week so far, sitting 4th overall. So let's hope that they can keep this one. They've also got a support team out here, the Starship. We can see on the very far side a huge motorboat out here with some Italian supporters cheering hard for that team. I believe team owner Pablo Ramos's boat, so they're gonna want to pull off a win here. I just don't know this early in the race that we can call it for them yet.
Certainly from this picture, you see Azura really controlling the fleet by keeping everyone out to the left-hand side. Gladiator, what I was saying about having this nice high mode, you look at their graphic, how they've come up to Platoon. Platoon now, I think they're setting up their runner, being ready to tack, because that's a very difficult place to live in, with Quantum up to weather and Gladiator down to leeward but forward. We've already seen Sorcha peel out, and I don't think it'll be too long before seeing Platoon go. And also Ran being squeezed up by Quantum. We might see them having to peel off as well.
That start working just now for the Gladiator. Platoon positioned ahead of Quantum on the virtual.
You can see the right just starting to pay on Gladiator. You see, in fact, all of the boats have kind of done this. There's a little bit of right in their track, and you'd think that if Sled are seeing this, that going out to the right-hand side of the course, they might find even more of a right out there. And they didn't have. I don't think Sled had the best start. So I think them and Provetza were caught up in the fight for the committee boat, and they had to tack out early. But it's not looking too bad from the Gladiator, and they're probably hoping that they can consolidate on their last result and get back into this. And Ed Baird pushing a lot of optimism into the team to get back into the regatta. You've seen Platoon just tacked off there. You see that in the track how they were getting sucked into Gladiator's line. They've had to tack off, and now they're ducking Quantum, Ran, Azura, and Allegre. I think it's Azura really controlling that left hand pack. And as soon as Azura decide they want to go, then we'll start seeing Allegre and Ran. Maybe Ran might go early just to get away from the bad wind that will come from all the boats going over at the same time. But certainly Gladiator in Boatine's newest design, like I was saying, it does like these conditions, and the flat water. Tony likes the flat water for driving, and these are good conditions for us, and the boat's going fast, and it shows how important the start is really. You get that good clean start, and it makes the world a difference. You can see Ran just peeling off there. They're obviously getting sucked into Quantum and deciding to go before all the other boats go on top of them.
Nice shots there of the Gladiator alongside teammates, training partners, Quantum Racing.
they're going really nicely there. It's always hard to come back after a 10th.
Yeah.
And these conditions, these light conditions, make you need to concentrate more. And it's nice to see them bouncing back even at this early stage.
And what will Ed be saying to Tony at this stage?
I think it's all about focus. Ed just needs Tony to be totally focused on what's happening, and not to get caught up in what's going on, and keep his head in our boat. Make sure that his mind's nowhere else other than
keep the boat fast.
keeping the numbers exactly as they should be, and chasing our target numbers. And as long as Tony stays calm and the trimmers all stay calm and the boat's quiet, like we talked about yesterday, then hopefully they can achieve that. But certainly the afterguard on board, Gladiator and Quantum and Azura, are thinking that the left is still in its the stronger element, and that the right shifts and the building sea breeze or even the breeze being sucked away in the right isn't just quite as strong yet. But maybe we see a different beat in the second beat.
That perspective there looks like Gladiator moving forward very slightly on Quantum. Jen, you're close by them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks like they have had a great upwind so far. I mean, not only are they doing well on Quantum, I think they'll be pinching off Quantum ultimately, but it looked like they were even gaining on Azura. The Italians just tacked. I think possibly should still be leading the fleet, but big gains to Quantum. What's difficult to tell from here is whether the far side is going to be paying or not. I mean, on board Brunelesec Gazprom, we know we have Michele Evaldi. He's not only the program manager, but their strategist, and he was one of the reasons behind the 52 Super Series coming here to Scarlino, and he was one of the first teams to tack off, and we've been talking about that right being a question mark in this race, and I think that'll be the big question mark, is as Azura leads back across the course, whether there will be any questions between them and Brunelesec and Sled, who are tacking off of the boat. But down here closer to us, Gladiator definitely pulling out forward of Quantum slowly ending up in their hip pocket and just above Allegre, I believe. So Quantum's going to have to decide whether, if they tack, they then duck, or if they try to hold off in what is now going to be Gladiator's bad air.
Certainly it's a really long way back on port to get back into the fleet. So for sure, between Ed and Terry and Andy on Allegre, they'll be really praying that the right doesn't lift up too much, and the other boats don't get back into it, and they don't have too far away to sail back into this race.
Well, they have just tacked out here, these three boats all onto port, led by Allegre, then Quantum, then Gladiator. They are crossing the closest starboard tacker. In fact, Platoon, the red sail numbers, is lee bowing Allegre. And it looks like on the far side, Azura was able to lee bow Brunelesec, forcing Brunelesec to tack off. So I'm not sure the farthest right boat, maybe Andy and Fergal, the farthest right boat might have made some gains here.
What do you think, Fergal?
I think, you see Ran, I think, and Sled are over there. Ran looks like they've made a nice gain, and we'll see how they go on Brunelesec, and then we get the idea of how they're doing against Azura. But Azura just coming up. I think Azura made a little loss in those two tacks. I think Platoon are a bit closer to Azura than they first were. Maybe Azura will put a lee bow on Platoon here, or maybe
they just have, in fact. Yes, I don't think they could cross Allegre above Platoon, so they've had to lee bow. Well, they haven't had to. They were on starboard, but they've gone for the lee bow as a protective moment.
Well, it looks like the left has continued just to hold its form that we've seen in the last few days, and maybe the middle just not paying as much as I thought it was going to. In the last race we saw Allegre do so well by going up the middle of both beats, and maybe it's not paid so much for Azura. They had such a cracking start, but that little right shift over on the left that meant Gladiator and Quantum could kind of just hip up on the boats to windward of them, and then tack over. I think Gladiator's probably got a good hold on this race at the moment, and certainly a good bounce back if they do. They just need to sail the rest of the race clean. and let the private battles, which are definitely going to start developing. I think we'll see Quantum and Platoon. I don't think Quantum and Platoon are too far apart here. It says here that Platoon are about 50 metres behind Quantum at the moment.
You were saying this is very much the kind of sweet spot for the Gladiator, the newest generation Platoon design.
Yeah, we saw in our first little training camp that we did in West Palm Beach, it was very, very light, flat water, and ourselves on the 2015 Gladiator racing against this boat being sailed as Interlodge, was very, very smooth in these conditions, and was able to sail a much more heeled and higher mode in the light winds. And I think we kind of just saw that in the first part coming out on starboard. And it looks like they're just getting knocked a little bit. Looks like there's a little bit of a right here. So Gladiator have just gone down and sailing down towards Quantum's line a little. Allegre are actually sailing slightly higher, but hopefully that doesn't extend all the way to the ley line, because they've still got a long way to go. And the boats like Brunellasek and Sorcha will be really hoping that it is going to stay a bit more right, and that they can pull back into the fleet here.
And your assessment of Quantum's position just now?
Well, I think they're struggling where they are now. They've got Allegre pulling up on them. They've got Gladiator kind of in a little righty, so they're going to get squeezed out. But they don't want to go any more left, really, especially if there's a bit of a right coming in. So they might just have to kind of suck it there for a little while and eat some dirt and go. Still a long way to go to the ley line, as I said, but they're not in the best position. And Platoon will be seeing this and thinking that's good. That's a bad place for them to be, but unfortunately there's not really anywhere for them to go, because by the time they tack, they've still got the safety mark at the top mark to go around. So you see them taking a little high mode there just on the graphic, maybe just to get out of Gladiator's air a little more. High slow for a little while just to get a bit more clean air, but no, it's not the best place for them to be.
Well, it's not even that long to the ley line anymore. They're only about 4 boat lengths to that offset mark, so no chance of attack off. They've just got to sit in the batter of Gladiator, and I think Gladiator, good for you, is looking very, very strong here. I mean, it doesn't look like there's a single team in contention as they just come around that white offset mark from the windward mark. They'll be tacking onto the starboard ley line in about 7 seconds, and they've got a solid lead. They had Gladiator in their hip pocket, and they're just giving them bad air. And underneath, Allegre possibly going to be the one to force Quantum over early, but Gladiator with a 2 boat length lead ahead of Allegre as they've just tacked now and are 1 boat length off the top mark. Just behind Allegre tacking, Quantum racing lee bowing Allegre. The question will be whether they can hold that lee bow and make it stick, because they were going quite slow that entire last period, and as we're watching from here from the offside, it looks like Allegre very much pulling out half a boat length over Quantum here, so it's going to be a slow windward mark rounding for Quantum, but Gladiator around the windward mark, trucking towards the offset mark.
So we can see
Quantum and Allegre.
Seems like Quantum getting around inside Allegre, is it?
Yes, Quantum rounds inside. Yeah, they were slow, but not too slow. So Allegre not able to actually roll over the top. So Quantum should continue to keep some overlap here. And in fact, Terry Hutchinson and Borglar going quite high to try to force that overlap on Allegre. You could see the distance between them and Gladiator in front becoming massive at the moment. I think they're just trying to make sure that they've got some gauge as they come around this mark, and then they can bear away. And it was just a really good protective mood there from Quantum Racing. I'm impressed that they were able to hold off Allegre like that. Behind, Azura, blue boat, after such a good start, again, maybe just too many tacks up the middle, dropped into 4th. Then we've got Platoon, current leaders, in 5th with the red sail numbers, the German boat. And then an entire fleet of 5 boats coming straight out as black sails. Hard to see, but I think it's Preveza, then Sled, Brunellasek possibly last, and just above, Sled ran racing.
It's pretty tight on that beat, considering one minute between 1st and 10th is not the biggest gap. Only 16 seconds from first to second. I think Sled probably had a bigger gap in the last race, but 1 minute over a 2 mile or 1.8 mile beat is a really condensed fleet. So there's plenty more in this race, but Gladiator will just be looking to extend and hope that there's hope there's battles going on behind them that means they can just sail off and hopefully continue the good form they've been after that beat.
Gladiator going for the early jibe here. In fact, they've just jibed off, crossing the entire fleet behind. The only other boat behind having jibed is Brunello, shortly followed by Sorcha. But that leaves the fight at the current moment between Quantum Racing and Allegre. Terry Hutchinson and Boroglari having been very aggressive earlier. They slightly luffed Allegre on that offset mark just to make sure that they'd have distance to bear away and set their kite and have clear air. A little bit of a match racing move, and now Quantum Racing also rolling into the jibe.
I think this is like one of the first times we haven't seen the fleet go into the right hand side of the beat as you look down it. I mean,
it seemed to me in the Gladiators, as Gladiator jibe, they had pressure on their left shoulder as it were, coming down the middle of the run. Sorcha going over to try and find that, I think.
Yeah, we see Allegre going a long way. I would have thought that Allegre would have jibed on Quantum there just to try and cover them a little, but I think Allegre they weren't quite lucky enough to get that roll on Quantum, and as Jenny said, the Quantum defensive move up at the top mark just to hold them high and then give themselves a bit of breathing space. You saw Quantum pull out maybe a 2 or 3 boat length lead just before they jibed.
Yeah.
And now Allegre's new battle here is with Azura. So they're being held out by Azura, and they're going a long way into the right of this beat run.
So there, Azura go, and as you said, Allegre waiting for them and going now.
And that's a really tough spot to jibe there, Andy. I think they they allowed Allegre behind them to jibe, and then they saw them jibe, and then still chose to go in what I think is right in their bad air. I don't really know what that decision was, in fact.
I think it might be a point that the right looking downwind might be so bad that they don't want to go there, that they'll take the hit just to start going left and follow the boats that have already jibed. And we saw that the right on the last downwind leg wasn't that in the last leg of the previous race. It just wasn't that strong, and Sled made big gains by jibing early, and Gladiator and Quantum will be hoping they make big gains by going early again here. But it's a funny place to jibe, right underneath Azura and Preveza, especially after knowing that they jibed first. So, but they are there.
You know, strangely, on this port jibe, all the kites look much more stable than they did on the starboard jibe. They were having that really whiskery, pillowy, please stay filled earlier on the starboard jibe. So I think the wave's a little bit sitting different to the wind, and it makes for an easier port jibe, in fact. So perhaps you're happy to get on port jibe earlier and just extend a little bit, and then hope that you get a header that lets you come back on starboard. But I think it'd be really tough for the trimmers and the drivers on the other jibe.
That's like Quantum just closing the gap a little on Gladiator there, maybe sailing a touch faster. He's got a knot faster on the graphic at the moment. Whether that's true or maybe they're just sailing a little higher, but certainly closing the gap from started off as 50 meters.
Yeah, I think Gladiator just brought the bow up momentarily, and you see the speed rise correspondingly.
I think the bottom the gate rounding will be an interesting one, because if they're starting to think the right's slightly better for the beat, then we may see a few more boats not particularly look at how the boats who went left early in the last beat went, but maybe something's changing out there. You know, they've got all these numbers and the true wind direction, and they're making a mean number off of that, and they're assessing that average wind direction, and they might be deciding that the right might be slightly better. But it's hard to know from here with what they're seeing on their screens.
What do you think of this next beat, Jen?
I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be hard to steer yourself away from the left. We saw Gladiator win the pin and win the race to the top mark. So I think Allegre had been winning from the middle and lost out going to the right. And even if we saw maybe a tiny bit of a right shift at the top mark and maybe even a longer right shift on the downwind, which is why we're having such a long port tack here, port jibe, it doesn't necessarily mean you would want to give away that left-hand side.
Yeah.
So I do think I would be protecting the left. I think if you're Ed Barrett on board Gladiator, you'd be thinking hard about the second option because you, especially on the first upwind, came from the left.
I think given the... sorry.
Well, I do think generally it looks like the breeze has gone further right to the race course. We haven't seen Maria change the course, but we saw a very long starboard upwind. We said that at the start, that it looked like it had been a 10-degree right, and we are now seeing a very long port tack downwind. So I think it just affects how you sail. If it's a longer one tack or one jibe, but if it's not shifting, then you would still play the side of the course you think is going to win, even if ultimately there's a longer starboard tack than a port tack.
Certainly that left side of the course seemed to be a little bit better just now, moving ahead of the that little group there with Azura.
But it's, I think, going back to what we said about Allegre's tactic of jibing underneath Azura, shows that Allegre are down to 6th now, and you see the tracker of Provezza is being letting them down towards the line of Allegre even more, and well, they look ahead. So Provezza coming all the way down, closing that gap, and Azura, I'd say, comfortably in front of Allegre, but we could see Provezza in front of them at the end as well. And then you've got Ran coming up, maybe a little overstood on the ley line, and coming in fast as the most left-hand boat looking up the course.
A little bit of bias to the left-hand mark looking upwind, according to our graphic, maybe 30 meters.
You know, just now we got an update from Maria Trio that there is a change of course and they've moved the top mark exactly 10 degrees. So we'll see 190 for the second upwind here.
One of the other features of the Navigator's computer he's got a time and distance number to both of these bottom marks. So he'll know, or all of the navigators out there will know, that there is this bias, and they'll be saying, well, the left mark is 10 seconds closer than the right mark. So I think we'll see a lot more people knowing about the bias in the gate. And we'll see a lot more people going to the left mark as we look at it now. Certainly, I think we'll see Gladiator do a jibe drop, which is nice in these wind conditions. You get to jibe and use the jib. They dropped a little earlier there, still doing a nice drop, but maybe we'll see a few jibe drops coming in and just letting the spinnaker fall down the jib and down into the hatch nice and easily.
But Jenny, talk us around this first leeward gate then. Gladiator going around now.
Yeah, well, Fergal called that perfectly. Gladiator around, jibe drop, followed very closely by Quantum Racing. And then it looks like about a 5 boat length gap. I do think it will be Azura, the Italians, next. So up to 3rd. Platoon and Provezza very, very close between those two boats for who's going to be 4th. Probably we'll see both of them jibe drop. So Platoon on the far side from us going around the left-hand mark, and Provezza close to us going around the right-hand mark. And then Allegre, unfortunately, dropping to 6th. And I again, we all said we didn't quite know what happened with where they chose to jibe, but I think they just chose to jibe in bad air, and then they had to stick it out from there. A very close cross there for Ron Racing. Of course, they do have room over sled, but they did just barely get across the bow of sled. All 3 of these boats now, Provezza, Ran Racing, who was that just behind Ran Racing, sled, and 2 more boats. Brunanasek having caught up from last to passing Sorcha on that downwind, going to the far side. So a very, very, very close fleet still after 2 legs, and it is Gladiator and Fergal's team leading up the course. They've tacked covering Quantum Racing and just underneath Quantum Azura.
Jenny, don't overexcite him, please. But in the kind of big picture, then that loss to Allegra is again effectively to Platoon. Platoon now moving to within one boat length, or one boat of Quantum Racing, or two at the moment if you look at the virtual. But it's getting closer and slightly better for Platoon in terms of the overall battling against Quantum Racing.
We just saw some pretty harsh-looking footage on Sorcha. We see them at the bottom, at the right of the screen now, just parked there. I think they had a bit of a problem in their drop. And from the onboard camera, you could see the spinnaker just down to leeward in the water. They did have this problem the other day. They dropped it, and it's
on the second day. Yeah.
As soon as you get the head or the tack just catches the water, it's so easy to pull the kite back out. And if your bow team haven't got a really good hold on it, you have to get the entire team forward. And we saw a few shots off the water of this happening to Sorcha.
Yeah.
I think it might have just happened again, unfortunately for Sorcha and Andy Clark, who used to be with us. It was so nice to see how them doing well in the older boat against the fleet, but it's unfortunate for them to have another bad drop.
So if anything, the breeze looking like it may have gone just very slightly more right, just looking at Gladiator's track lifting very slightly away from Quantum, I feel.
Yeah, Gladiator
in a nice strong position there with their main rivals to leeward.
Yeah, they were given a good opportunity there with Quantum following them around the same mark and Azura following them around the same mark. They always had that option to let those boats tack first and then just provide that loose cover on top. And it's always going to be hard for Quantum to then sail through from underneath, or any of the boats underneath to sail through. They might be slightly bow forward because they tacked earlier, but ultimately Gladiator get that opportunity just to have that loose hold on the fleet. And it looks like most of the fleet want the left here.
So our projected points table then would have Quantum leading on count back from Platoon just now, but still plenty of this race still to go. Azura would be up to third, but is very much a situation at the moment, may not be the case at the end of this race. But a really engaging battle between Quantum and Platoon just now. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Well, and you're speaking about Azura. It looks like right now they're in a tough spot. They've got Quantum Racing and Gladiator to windward. They can't sail high mode because they'll be in the bad air of Quantum Racing. They're a bit bow back of Quantum Racing. So they have to sail either medium BMG or foot mode, and yet they've got Preveza underneath, Preveza having rounded the left-hand mark. So Preveza was bow out, and it looks like Azura has actually gone for foot mode and is trying to make this roll over the top of Preveza. But if they just air a little bit here, then they'll have a big problem with Preveza just underneath them. So it'll be an interesting scenario to see if they're able to pull this off and hold off this third place.
Indeed, and again, big picture, it's about Platoon just to weather maybe a small opportunity for them.
I think so, if we see more of a right shift, but they don't. They look bow back right now, so they will be needing that right shift for it to come into their favor.
I think adding to what Jenny was saying about the Azura's little battle with Preveza, if they do foot off to try and protect that position and get bow forward of them, they're going to sacrifice a lot on Platoon further up. Platoon are sailing in a nice mode. They haven't dropped into Gladiator's line at all since they tacked.
Yeah, they have a lane.
So Azura have kind of got to decide who they're going to race in this one, whether they're going to really want this left and protect against Preveza, or will they be looking over at Platoon and going, well, we can't sail too low because we're going to lose out on those guys as well. So it's a difficult strategy for the guys on Azura in that position.
You look a little bit more powered up now.
They do, absolutely. They look like they've come into a bit more breeze out here on the left side, and I think it's a tough call, but if you are the boat already to the left, you might just have to hedge your bets and say, well, I hope it goes our way, because if it doesn't go our way, Platoon's going to have us anyway. So you play the boat that's closer to you, which at the current moment is Preveza, and they have done quite well to get bow forward of Preveza, having come from almost a boat length and a half bow back of Preveza.
That's right. In the words of Morgan Larson, you've got to play with the tools you've got in your box.
Although I don't know if he has many tools today. I'm sorry, Morgan, but they've had a really tough last race.
A little bit rusty.
They're having a tough one today, yes.
But, you know, again, another cliche. Terry Hutchison says you have to win your side. That's the key thing. You can't be wishing for something else.
I think one of the interesting developments of this race, as we look now on the tracker at the whole picture, you see Ran and Brunelesek way out to the right, like miles away from the rest of the fleet. Obviously, they went round they went round that mark in seventh and ninth. Ran in seventh and Brunelesek in ninth, going round that bottom mark. So they obviously have to try and do something, and they've got a nice left actually out initially going out there on the left. So it will probably look good for the guys who are in the left coming back, but you know, they're ringing the bell a little bit to hope this right does come in a little earlier and get back into this race and further up. It shows on the graphic here that that Ran are actually up to fourth and Brunelesek to sixth. But that could just be because that big left shift after the bottom gate is helping them there, but they maybe struggle coming back in on starboard.
I think they might be happy to roll the dice to the right as well. If we've seen the breeze go 10 degrees right from the start, and we know it might go further, then if you're finally going, well, we're already last or deep for Brunelesek. Yeah, why not, Michele Evaldi? Roll the dice, go out to the right, see if it pays.
Gladiator really doing what Azura did on the last leg, on the last upwind leg, controlling the three boats to leeward of them, and they totally decide when the rest of the fleet will go. And if the fleet do decide to go before them, then they get to hold that nice cover on top of them again. So Gladiator's going to be a pretty hard boat to overtake here. And there you see them peeling off now, and maybe we'll see the next three boats. Quantum probably go off next, certainly within. Not too far away.
Not too far away, but they have left a bit of a gap to this port ley line. Quantum rolling into it at the moment. I think you want to go early just in case there is more left shift, but they've left a little bit of distance to the guys behind. Quantum goes in, Azura just on Quantum's line, and Preveza right with. So they've got, as you said, there's a little bit of a domino. In fact, even Platoon going underneath all of them in the middle of the course, which is a fair point. If you don't think there's a lot of distance past these guys, you wouldn't want to come out and overstand.
Looks like the breeze has actually built a bit more on these two boats. You got the guys in full hike mode now. They looked a little softer on the first upwind leg. So hopefully with this right, it's not going to be sucking the wind away, but actually is a bit more of a developing sea breeze. I think that's what the guys would be hoping for anyway. That it's more of a build than our forecasted drop.
Oh, very much so. There's whitecaps for the first time in the last hour. I mean, after the end of the last race, we were worried that it was going to keep dropping quickly, and it has not. It's turned into a beautiful sea breeze afternoon here in the Tyrrhenian Sea.
You might see Preveza and being the most windward boat here, probably having to foot off a little bit towards the end, A, just to get around the safety mark, and B, to keep up with the boats in front if they've overstood a little. I mean, they were kind of forced to overstand by the controlling boats of Gladiator and Quantum. But we may see there's less than a kilometre to this top mark. We may see them having to just foot off and go for a bit more speed towards the end. As far as the
right side not looking quite as good
as far as the graphic shows, that early left was stronger than any hopeful right, and Ran and Brunelesek not looking as good on the graphic as they were shown to be before they tacked. Sorcha just having to play a bit of catch up here with the problem of the bottom mark putting the kite in the water. But with 2 legs left of the race, you've just got to keep going and keep positive. You never know what's going to happen to the boats in front. We see people rip kites or kites not going up and big twists.
Yeah.
So there's always room to gain. So the guys in Sorcha just have to keep focused and try and get back into it as much as they can. But very, very difficult given the quality of the fleet.
Yeah, we are on board with Sorcha. Owner driver Peter Harrison there.
Obviously, their tactician Nick Asher had good success here last year with a leg ray.
That's right.
And I think looking back on Sorcha's earlier results this week, he's doing a great job with Peter on there, as he did with Andy last year.
So Jen, you're on board with Platoon just now. What would you be thinking?
Platoon, well, they're so close to this offset mark. Gladiator is basically just gone past it. Quantum Racing going past it at this moment. So there's not a lot more that Platoon can do. There's not a lot of runway really left, especially to their left. In fact, apologies, you guys. They're going past the last upwind marks, but the breeze has been shifted to the right a little bit, so they just haven't been pulled yet, and we're sailing a little bit further to the change marks. So I only noticed because Quantum
went the wrong side of it.
Went above owner mark, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's not much further distance at all. In fact, it's only just another 10 boat lengths to the next set of marks. And when they put in a change mark, they don't have that offset. They just have the weather mark, and God, it's confusing how to say it, but the second offset, which you round after you round the weather mark. So the team's allowed to keep that white mark. It's no longer in the race course. And I think Platoon, the hard part is they're about to be rolled by Quantum Racing, but there's enough distance from them and to Quantum. It's about 5 boat lengths that it shouldn't be too much bad air for just the 4 boat lengths left to that starboard ley line. So John Kostecki just hoping that those guys out to the left side of him, Azura and Preveza, he's hoping that they're going to get a little righty when he is tacking, and they still have to maintain on port tack. But I think he could be anywhere from 3rd, if that happens, to probably 5th if Azura and Preveza stay ahead. But it is Gladiator now tacking onto starboard at the top mark. In fact, a tack rounding here as they just roll into it right at the mark. So I had called that they had tacked early of the ley line earlier, but I think I was calling it to the wrong weather mark. So they called that ley line perfectly. They allow their competitors to overstand behind them, which means they've gained a little bit of distance. Now it'll be 2 or 3 boat lengths behind them to Quantum Racing, just making Tony Langley feel a bit more comfortable for this downwind. And then Platoon tacking now onto starboard. I think Platoon will have gained Azura here. I think bearing away now, Platoon. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but yeah, Azura ducking Platoon. So really well done, just having called that. Let's tack underneath that group just in case they overstand, and it's worked out in their favor. They've gone from 5th to 3rd. Gladiator now rounding the offset.
The key moment, I think.
A extremely key moment there, that upwind for Platoon, especially as they're only now 1 point behind Quantum Racing.
Exactly.
We've said it so many times. The chipping away, the mentality of never giving up, and just knowing that the boats in front of you are in your sights, and and if you have that attitude that you can overtake the boat in front of you, then you will. And they've done it. They've just taken 2 top class boats to overtake Azura from that far behind at the bottom mark. I think they did some great tactics there.
Incredible clarity of vision and being able to think a little bit ahead. And that's really the kind of feedback you get from on board. But we see it yet again, and Platoon up to 3rd, I think. Azura 4th.
Actually, Allegre overtaking Preveza there as well.
as the fleet rounds this offset mark, I think we can tell the offset's a bit higher than it has been, at least for the first race. Their kite's not quite able to fill as quickly because they have to bear away a bit further. Gladiator had a beautiful set, and then behind Quantum, I couldn't quite see what had happened, but it just wasn't quite as crisp. Their kite didn't fill as quickly, so a little bit of a gain there to Gladiator probably originally, but at the moment it looks like they're maybe wallowing a little bit, maybe trying to sail a little deep, and their kite is fluttering uncomfortably, so it might be that Quantum's gaining back onto the leaders.
I think it'd be interesting to see how much platoon gain on Quantum here, knowing that they've got really good downwind speed.
Yeah, I was just
They'll be
thinking the same
hoping
thing.
to reel them in. And
so we're just watching Gladiator. They were just watching the replay then for Gladiator come round the top mark, Fergal.
Oh, you just see the
pirate of Scarlino.
You see the guys just giving it all they've got on the pedestals to get the kite up and just make sure that kite's perfectly set before the jib starts to come down, and that it's just one fluid motion, kite setting, boom going out, jib coming down, all at in one go. And if you nail a manoeuvre like that that well, then it's almost a perfect rounding.
Mr. Langley channeling Johnny Depp, I think, these days.
We see that early jibe on Gladiator. It's almost exactly the same position as they jibed in on the last downwind leg, and we'll probably see Quantum just go beyond their line. I think they're too far behind to make an impact by jibing first, so they'll look to go a little lower down into the right hand corner as you look downwind, and hope to sail up at a little bit faster than Gladiator. But I think 70 meter lead on Gladiator is pretty comfy, and they'll be very happy, but they won't want to let Quantum sail all the way down into the right hand corner. But not much they can do about it with that separation now.
Not much you can do about it, yeah, indeed. But I mean, a fantastic race, real cerebral sailing. It's really great high tension all the way through the race. Places changing, and we've seen Platoon chipping away once again to try and get in touch with Quantum Racing.
I think something you see here on this picture of Platoon, you see how much their emphasis is on getting the weight forward in the boat. You see how dug in the bow is, like they're all the way down over the bobstay. And Harm Muller Spruer, the driver, is actually the most aft person there. The runner trimmers left the runners, and he's gone forward. And sometimes you'd have the kite trimmer a little closer to the driver so they can communicate better, but even he's further forward in the boat. They're obviously setting up for a jibe here, but there's a real emphasis on getting the weight forward and getting that trim number bow down.
So get the bow down and the stern out a little bit, is it?
Yeah, I mean it's a bit like sailing your Optimist. You even with that square bow, you always wanted that to be a little further down than the big square transom that
lift the transom out of the water.
Acted like a big brake. It's like dragging a big wedge behind you, and it's the same here. If you can get that big wedge of the boat out of the water, and have the pointy bit cutting through the water, then it's obviously going to be faster and make sure the boat's not too sticky.
The pointy bit, that's your degree in naval architecture coming out.
Yeah, the pointy bit. That's what I've ever known it as.
That was your thesis in naval architecture, was the hydrodynamics of the pointy bit. Anyway, looking at Azura briefly, not such a good race for them. Winners in Miami, and really have not been able to impose themselves in the same way here. Meantime, projecting the points table, if things stay as they are in this race, I think we would see Platoon finishing the day with, I think, a 2-point lead as it stands at the moment. Anyway, we are on board with Gladiator.
You see the same thing there. Ben Durham, the runner trimmer, has left the runner, and we saw him move into the grinding role forward with Ian Baker on the hoist when we watched that replay. But that kind of leaves the navigator and the tactician to do the runners downwind, and get the bow down and and the not so pointy bit out of the water. I don't know what that bit's called either.
The back.
The back, that'll do.
So Jenny, how's the breeze looking for this final part of the final race of today?
Well, it is holding steady still, probably about 8 knots. It built for a while on that upwind. They were full hike, and now it's back to probably 8 or 9 knots. But I completely agree with Fergal. It looks like the guys on board Platoon sailing the boat very differently than almost the entire rest of the fleet. You cannot see bodies forward on Quantum Racing or on Gladiator the way that they are forward on Platoon. So they have said that they have a fast design downwind, but it might be more to the way that they're sailing than actually to the boat design. I think it's impressive to see it's such a different bow trim and boat trim than the other boats. Ultimately, we have a little bit of a puff on the side of the course where I am, the left-hand side looking back. Might be helpful for Platoon, definitely will be helpful behind for Allegre and Preveza. It doesn't look like Gladiator or Quantum have this pressure, but they had a good enough lead. I don't think they would necessarily want to jive to consolidate here. It's still looking like another long port downwind, so maybe the breeze even continuing further right, which is a good reason to jibe early if you're happy with it continuing to further right.
I think we're just seeing a little. We can see on the track here, the right, certainly on Azura, and I think Preveza, the furthest left boats. As we look at the tracker here, you see their lines are going much lower, and I think it's Ran and Sled in the middle, and even Gladiator and Quantum, but Platoon, Azura, and Preveza in a nice low mode here, and if they're carrying the speed, that's going to be really good for them. And Brunellasek taking the really early jibe and didn't get that let down. They've actually had to jibe back to get back into the fleet, but
a pretty horrible angle too.
Given where they were, we've said it so many times. You can't just follow the fleet round and expect to overtake them on speed. They had to go and try something different, and if you think the right's going to pay, then they made that call to make the early jibe, and well, it hasn't worked out for them this time, but we have seen it work before.
Meantime, the winners of that first race of the day, Sled, down in 8th place.
Yeah, it's a real reversal of fortunes a bit. You saw Sled and Ran having a great first race today, and now back into 7th and 8th place. Gladiator scoring a big 10 in the first, and coming back to well, hopefully keep winning this one. And even Quantum, they were down in the last race, or the first race of the day, and they've pulled back up. And Allegre, unlike them to be down at 6th, they've been very quiet, and as Jenny said, being pretty stealthy, and I think that first run really affected them and put them down to 6th, and they're going to struggle to get back, and higher than that. They'll be hoping they can sail maybe down to Preveza and Azura a bit more, but it's pretty light over in the middle of the course there.
Exactly that, I think, Fergal. It really looks like Preveza and Azura here bringing this big left-hand side puff down. They've been sailing what looks almost like 10 or 15 degrees lower than Allegre this entire time. Platoon just on the outside of that pressure, just able to hold that low mode as well, though not the same speed maybe as the two boats this furthest left here. I mean, again, I said Quantum Racing and Gladiator had enough of a lead, but you definitely can't say that at this point, because these guys continue in this puff, and it does not look like it extends anywhere across the rest of the course.
Yeah, we just saw a speed graphic, and Azura and Preveza coming in doing 10-11 knots, whilst Gladiator and Quantum doing 9.5. So they are closing the gap up. But there's you see it now that Azura, Preveza, and Platoon right at the high end of the 9s. Gladiator just jibing, so down at 7-8 knots. But Gladiator looking to do their last jibe into the finish. But yeah, Azura and Preveza making big gains. I think Azura will hope to not have to put in another jibe, and maybe hope that Platoon has to put in another jibe. and make some time up on Platoon and Quantum.
A very, very quick one from the social networks just as we come into this finish. Question is, what's the difference between the Quantum Racing and the 2017 design? That's the Gladiator, which is leading at the moment, and hopefully in the next couple of seconds we're going to get a reply direct from Adolfo Caro in the Bottin office. We're just waiting for Adolfo to reply. He says a quick hello to Fergal.
Hi Adolfo. Thank you for your help.
But it's a nice moment for them, seeing the Gladiator and Quantum coming through, both Bottin designs. If Adolfo could just type a little bit quicker, we'll be getting that reply.
I don't know if we can wait for the reply, as we're getting very, very close to this finish line at the moment.
You talk us through it, Jen. Carry on.
Well, we saw a really interesting scenario there. Gladiator coming across jibes, Quantum Racing looking much closer than I was expecting, and I thought maybe Quantum was going to plant one on Gladiator and try to roll them right at the finish. And I think they hesitated, then they went past, and then they sort of jibed in their hip pocket. So Gladiator taking this win, crossing the line. Now a refreshing second win of this regatta and of this TP52 World Championships. Well done to Gladiator, Tony Langley, Ed Baird, just holding off Quantum, a boat length and a half behind now. Quantum Racing taking second place comfortably, and actually you can see Terry Hutchinson giving Bora a little triple pat on the back. Actually, he's continuing to pat him on the back as the fight goes on behind.
That's called a massage.
I think that's a sigh of relief in physical form. But the fight behind is from Platoon, and Platoon is just pulling it off with a boat length to spare now over Azura. The Italians jibed early, tried to get on their breeze, and then have to bear away hard to cross the line. Crossing the line fourth, but a good catch up there for the Italian team.
So Harm Muller Spear hands the helm over straight away to Jordi Calafat.
The far side of us now, Preveza crossing the line. They've had a tough race. They've been up and down in this race, as has the boat just behind Bow 19, the Grey Hull Allegre. They were at points in third, then they had a really difficult first downwind. We thought maybe they'd made a decision, a tactical error there in the spot that they decided to drive, and they dropped from third to sixth. So they continue to finish in sixth place. Behind, another good battle developing between the Swedes, Ron Racing, and Sled. I think it'll be the Swedes, but they're having to defend high. And I think perhaps they're going to try to then call no room on Sled, so we'll see, but they should be able to cross ahead now as they bear away towards the line. Both boats bearing away there. It's clear that Ron Racing will have that one. And then just after that, we've got a blue boat in front of them, so it's going to be Brunello Gazprom, and then I think Sorcha never able to recover after dropping their spinnaker in the water just for that 30 seconds on that first downwind. So that rounds out the fleet for the final race of the day here, Andy.
A very, very excited young Fergal Finlay about to explode here beside me, but congratulations to Tony Langley and the team on the Gladiator, second win of the week, and I'll very, very quickly give you that reply from Adolfo Caro for Duncanson Scott. Our question was, what was the difference between Quantum Racing and the new 27 Bottin design? And Adolfo in Santander says the hull shape on Gladiator is a newer, more powerful shape, very quick upwind, but quite similar downwind. Would you agree with that, Fergal, speaking as a naval architect? It was kind of an extension of what they did on boats like Brunello, which you can see here. It's just the next step up from that, and we've seen how powerful it is in a range of conditions. And there's no compromise downwind either. The boat's, it's still a very, very quick boat downwind. So normally, if you want to make a boat at this level, which is really good upwind, you might have to sacrifice a little in the downwind, and they haven't done that. And I don't think it'll be the last boat of that shape that comes out of Bottin. I think there'll be, next time that the new boats are built, whoever decides to build a new boat over the next couple of years, we'll see a lot more boats like that, and very powerful. I think everyone knows how good that boat is.
Well, that's what we were asking, or one of the questions we were asking at the beginning of the week. A lot of eyes focused on Gladiator to see how it goes
to make that decision? How much faster is it than the existing Quantum Racing, the Azura, the existing Botin designs, and therefore does that influence you to build a new boat for next season? And we know that there are different owners looking and weighing up that question just now.
Yeah, so obviously it's a huge expense to go and build one of these boats. It's very time consuming to build it, and they don't come cheap. So it has to be a really well thought out plan that this is something you've got to keep and race for 3 years. This is the third season for the older new boats, the 2015 boats. This is their third year of racing. So some of the teams may be thinking, okay, it's time for an upgrade. You can see the obvious benefits of the new design coming out of Botin. The older Botin boats like Quantum and Brunner Sec are very, very strong boats, and then they've just taken that one leap further forward in Interlodge or Gladiator.
So there's the standings after today, going into the final day tomorrow. Platoon then, Harmuller Spreer, John Kostecki calling tactics, leading by 2 points as he did as he went into the day. Quantum Racing then on 22, the current world champions. A really mouth-watering battle tomorrow. I think Allegri 10 points off the lead, but a reasonably good day for them, holding on to third place on 30 points. Azura on 32. Gladiator now, thanks to that win, solid mid-table. They've got 6 points clear of Sled, who are in 6th place. Provezza in 7th on also on 45. 46 point for Ran Racing. Sorsha 52 and Brunner Sec Gazprom on 52. So it's a really mouth-watering finale to the Rolex TP52 World Championships tomorrow. Jenny, just your final thoughts of the day before we close for the day.
Oh, I just think we called it at the beginning of the fleet that this would be a really tricky venue to sail in. I think we saw that today. We saw Gladiator get a last and a first. We saw Sled get a first and I think a 7th. And we saw Quantum Racing get a 7th and a 2nd. So the fleet very tight. The race course very hard to call, and I think we'll see that again tomorrow. We definitely cannot say that Platoon has an easy lead in this regatta because nothing is easy out here.
But I think the key thing was just watching that recovery. I mean, a kind of mid-fleet, lower mid-fleet position for Platoon early on in that race, and they just never say die. They keep chipping away, and that key gain at the windward mark really is what keeps them at the top of the table, and really it's going to be an exciting final day. Nail biter, I think. Anyway, thanks for your excellent work today, Jenny, and we'll speak to you very shortly. We'll come back and Fergal Finlay, talk to us about this final day then. Well, the world champions against Platoon then.
Well, just if we have probably 2 races tomorrow, then it's going to be a big battle between Quantum and Platoon. It's only a 2-point gap, and well, for me, it's very hard to look past Platoon at the moment because they just have this, exactly as you said, never say die attitude. They were deep in that race from on the first beat, and they came back to third. And it's every race that they haven't won a race yet, but every race they have finished, they started off down the fleet a little, and they've always just gained. I don't think they've ever lost places going through.
Yeah, that was the point that I made in the press release earlier in the week. It seemed to be the team that have made gains successively in each race. As you say, they don't think they've gone backwards in races more than a place here and there, and particularly towards the end of the races. But a huge amount of pressure on them on tomorrow. They've been in this situation leading into the final day in the regatta in Miami, and as I say, also in Puerto Portales before they were up there, and they had a hideous final day. And I think a lot could depend also on what the weather is doing tomorrow. A solid breeze, they could really go out there and nail it. Yeah. A funky day in it, and really.
I think the biggest change tomorrow for Platoon will be they'll be sailing totally different strategy, and their sailing style will change completely. So far, the last 7 races they've been able to sail their own race. They haven't really been raced one-on-one by anyone, and tomorrow they're going to have Terry and Bora coming at them, to have a one-on-one.
Absolutely.
If you look at the points table, the worst that Platoon can do in this fleet is 4th.
And the great thing about it all is that you have this open information flow. It's
it might not be so open.
Exactly, that's what I'm wondering. And you're our man. You're going to be in there in the morning briefing and bring us all the inside information. Fly on the wall.
There might not
embedded reporter.
There might not be a meeting in the morning. You never know.
Well, go and ask Ed Reynolds and James Lyne how that's going to play out. Anyway, do join us tomorrow. We're going live through the final day of the Rolex TP52 World Championship, and what a day it's going to be. Join us then.